So this is where I come from. Probably all of you, most of you probably know about it. We are the number one in the country for research performance. And just for information, this particular year we became number one in one parameter across the world also. And what is that? Research impact. That means number of citations per faculty. If you take that, then we are ahead of Stanford, MIT, Caltech, you name it. So we are the number one in the world. It actually gives us the pride, and as a citizen of the country, we should all be proud of that, proud about that fact. Okay? Ours is more than 113 years old, but we consider an institute like this is pretty young. Institute like this will survive thousands of years, rather. So that's how it is. So now some of these statistics are here. I'm not going to read it through. This is me. I mean, some of my research interests. I predominantly work on aerospace applications, but even though some other applications are still there. But our ideas are predominantly based on control theory, basically. You can switch it off. Probably this is on also. So this is based on the control theory part of it. So we are very comfortable with this optimal control, optimal decision, flow control, things like that. So that is where it actually gels well. But anything that you want to do on optimal control, remember it needs a state space equation, right? Subject to some constraint. And what is that constraint? Some sort of a system dynamic. And the system dynamics needs to be a kind of either it is available to you or you need to build first so that you can do optimization based on that constraint, basically. So that is what we are hunting out for that. All right, and this particular funding, this particular research, and I claim very proudly that we have done quite a bit of work last 3-4 years, has been supported by something called the imprint program of MHRD. So that is a lot of acknowledgement to them. This is something called Impacting Research, Innovation and Technology. It was started by MHRD about 2015, and this is the Imprint 2 funded project. So I didn't know any of this. Somehow at that point of time, I didn't know anybody from Airport Authority. And unfortunately, neither Ministry of Civil Aviation nor Airport Authority of India was participating in this program. So we could not kind of tie up that. But then later on, I've been fortunate to have a lot of insight as well. Let's not talk about the story. Let's start about the real story rather. So if you really ask me, there are two remarkable achievements in humankind so far. So what is this actually? So if you really talk about very big breakthroughs, basically. One happens to be the electricity, right? Without electricity, nothing life stops. And probably the second biggest achievement is nothing but flying, the powered flight, basically. So what we are talking about is this one. Aviation or some sort of a remarkable journey, and the journey happens to be just about 120 years old. Not even 120, 115 years old. Rather. And you see 115 years where people could not fly to where we are today. That's really, really remarkable. So I just wanted to kind of capture that in some size. Earlier attempts were a lot of failures, so it came to a point that people thought that heavier than air flying machines are impossible. And that is proved in a theorem by Lord Kelvin, by the way. If you happen to go to the history part of it. And when was it? 1895. And who proved them wrong? Obviously, we know that who proved them wrong. And who are they? They were cycle mechanics. Okay. So Wright brothers are nothing but cycle mechanics, basically. But they were inspired by a lot of good quality studies in Germany, basically. So the history part will not be stopped. I will talk some other time. But essentially what means is, 1895 there was a theorem that heavier than air objects cannot fly. 1903-04, the entire humanity kind of very confidently can say that we can fly. From there, if you start, okay, just about 120 years old, and you can see that statistics now. So currently about 1 lakh daily commercial flights every day, carrying about 12 million passengers. Accidents are almost not there. Very rarely you see one or two, but that too in a couple of years or maybe decades apart, basically. And then approximately 5 lakh people are up in the air at any given point of time. Right now, if you take about at least 5 lakh people are flying it, right? That kind of a statistics we are talking about. Just about 120 years old, that kind of thing. So other aerospace vehicles are also there: undeclared aircraft, cargo aircraft, general aviation flight, military aircraft, UAVs, you can name it. So how does it happen? So many people, and also remember, the aircraft need to fly. They cannot hover, they cannot stop, they cannot brake, unlike surface vehicles. Right? So because of that, the remarkable thing is, we can actually claim statistically that it is nothing but quickest and safest mode of transport. Statistically, in other words, a person actually getting back to home or getting back to that home, that probability is 10 to the power minus 12. So statistically it has been shown that the chance of accident or you not surviving in an aircraft is 10 to the power minus 12. So essentially, very, very confidently you can fly nowadays. Right? All right. So how is this managed? How is this traffic managed safely on a daily basis? Of course, a lot of heads up to you. People like all of you. I mean, it's a massive infrastructure all over the world, and then people like ATC play a pivotal role there. Okay. So if you talk about the present air traffic system, that's what you are doing. That's our understanding is. Once the aircraft, ready to fly, it files a flight, kind of a flight plan, and then once it is approved, then this communication starts. And once the communication, there is some navigational aids, things like that, then surveillance part of it, radar, radius, all sort of things. Then essentially what happens is there's a lot of data communication and voice communication. That's what happens, right? And then status update is happening. So essentially, predominantly, if you see, it is nothing but a manual mode, supported by technology, but decisions taken by manual. Right? If man is not there, then we don't know how many accidents will happen, right? That way. Because they are very, very high-speed vehicles, basically. So we went to initially when we started this work, I actually happened to visit to ATC Chennai, which is pretty close to Bangalore, because that's one of those fire regions and all that. So we actually saw that there is an upper area control. People are too busy in their own respective sectors and things like that. Then this is the typical airport, that tower view, right? All of you are very familiar, very, very, very comfortable with this. So this is what happens. So a lot of people you see, they are all talking. It is nothing like automation sort of thing. Automation is only data part of it, but the command given is all kind of talking basically, right? So that is what we talk about. Some sort of a robust system which actually has done the job, right? So even in a very busy airspace, like you talk about a US airspace or even European airspace, things like that, it's doing the job. Only thing is it is making lot of stress on it. Right, people are very safe, and then of course a small chance of error will lead to heavy penalty, things like that, right? And then the concern about growth, basically, right? Existing is okay, somehow it is operating. Now what happens if there is a substantial amount of growth? All right, so that's what the scenario. You can see that, right? This is actual pictures, by the way. It's not fancy pictures, right? This is the scenario for takeoff. And what about landing? That's the scenario, okay? And what about mid-air? Mid-air also, that's the scenario. Okay? So that is what you are talking about. And also we are talking about rapid growth here, right? And just yesterday there was a news that until 2040, probably 7% growth is going to be there. And today morning, as the chairman told, about 11% growth about next 10 years at least, right? So that is what it is going to come, whether you like it or not. It's a very good thing, by the way. In fact, this GDP part, if you talk about GDP, then what is that? Per capita energy usage and the number of people flying the aircraft. These are all measures of economic growth, basically. So the more the people fly, this country is growing well. So that is what we should be proud about it. But the question is, it is already done and expected to grow much more. The question is, how do you do that? We need lot of bigger technical support, basically. That's what you need, right? This is some of the statistics, again, for general audience, those of you who don't know about it. We already use about 120, 130, 140 airports already. An existing system, which is already densely populated and things like that, this route and all that was given to us by Mr. Manjunath Nelly, is no more in the airport authority has gone, moved to, I think, ICA or somewhere is gone there. Okay, but then he came to IIT and gave some presentation. One of the slides I liked very much, so I kind of requested him to give it. So this is the slide that I liked extremely well. The question is, right now if you talk, approximately 5,000 daily flights are there in our own airspace, Indian airspace itself. Now that is okay, somehow we are going to manage, basically, that's not a problem. But what if the 2040 or 2030, it becomes 15,000 commercial aircraft, remember. Then there will be other things, other than that, there will be a rest of the things, basically, right? You've got unmanned air vehicles, you've got chartered flights, undeclared flights, cargo flights, you name it, actually, right? It is rightly said it may become 25,000, actually, 5 times. So when one is 5,000, and that becomes 15,000 or 25,000, probably the current system may not work that efficient. You may be able to maintain safety, not a problem. Probably somehow or other you will have holding times and a lot of things, but you will not be able to guarantee efficiency. So safety and efficiency both are required. So right, otherwise too many roundabout and all that is not really a good thing to do, right? That is what you are needing. We need safety without compromise, but efficiency is equally paramount important, basically. Okay, that's it. All right. So now I talked about cargo flights and private jets, all that. So how to manage the growth of air traffic? So this is further statistics that you can see some of that. In 2000, where were we? And 2020, where are we? Okay, so it was just before the pandemic and all that. So it has come back to this level. So if you see the growth, one column to other column, you can very convincingly tell that this growth is going to grow more and more extended. All right, the reasons are many. Of course, there are increasing airline operations. There are FDI in aviation, FDI in aviation and liberalized aviation policy. That's also coming up in a very big way. Rise in freight traffic also there, growth of passenger traffic also there. All these things are feeding into the growth of that, which is actually a good thing. In my view, it should not be afraid about it. We should actually, I kind of rather take pride in that. When I was a student in US, this it's amazing, right? This what we call as city bus service, city bus service. In US, it is like right? You can take a flight from one city to other city all the time. So this is what we all dream for any country to become a developed country. So that is fine. So it actually tells that economic prosperity of the people is getting good, and government incentives are also there, something like UDAN scheme. And also 100 more airports are coming 2024, 25, maximum 26 this year, right? That is what. Right now we have 130, and again you can be doubling the airports this year, right? That's it. All right, and 2040, that is what it is. All the statistics probably you know that. Now how to manage it. The idea here is what is currently being done is reactive ATC mode. That means only when the radar picks up, then you see what's happening. Or only when the ADS speed attack comes, then only see what is happening. It really doesn't tell you in a predictive way. Predictive is very rudimentary, right? So you really talk about what will happen 2 hours later, 1 hour later, 5 hours later. Then you really need a good predictive model. And that is what the bottom line is. Once you have the trajectory prediction done well for each and every aircraft, then the decision making can be very well taken. That is what is called next generation aircraft management. That's what we are here today basically. So this is what was procedural thing past. This is currently going on, radar ADS database system, and this is what is coming up in the future, which is trajectory based operation, TVO we call, right? Each and every aircraft will very precisely know what is the trajectory going to come ahead of time. And that information is coming to a central server, and you can clearly see which aircraft is going where exactly. Because so that is where our instrumentation is improving, a lot of good instrumentation coming up. And then on top of that, we need to have a very good high fidelity model. That's what it is. Once you have such a model, you can do so many things. You can do more automated systems. You can do mid-air safety announcement. You can reduce the holding time. You can predict a collision-free network and so on and so forth. Right? But for doing all that, what we really need, heart of everything, is a good air traffic model. Okay? Once you have a good air traffic model, then you can use that to predict. And not only predict, you can take decision based on that using optimal control, what I talked in the beginning. Once you have trajectory prediction known to you, that will come in the form of differential equation or whatever things that, right? Based on that, you can modify the trajectory, right? Once you know what is the predicted trajectory, you can modify each and every trajectory. So that is what the whole idea is, trajectory-based operation. So that is what you are talking about, and this is not a new concept. US has done long before, and that is about 95 they started. By 2003 they were ready with the system. I am going to give a glimpse of that. And then Europe is also ready, some sort of a European Sky ATM research program. Japan has its own thing, China has its own thing, and things like that. Where are we? We are ready to buy. Okay? So sorry to say that, but essentially the idea is we don't have anything right now. Okay, so if you really want to do something, this is the time to do. And in fact, one of my mentors, I'll give a picture of him in a couple of slides later. He has been telling me about this for the last 12 years. So somehow we got into this recently, but this motivation is there for a while. So what we are talking about now is an air traffic model for airspace of India. In short, we call it as ASMA of India. So ASMA stands very well here. It kind of resonates our ear with it, right? We did not coin this word. That naturally comes out anyway. Okay, so that is what it is. And then let us talk about a little bit of that. Again, thanks to our funding agency Imprint 2. But going forward, we like to have strong association with airport authority. So far, whatever has happened, but here henceforth it has to be much more. All right, and this is some of our, a logo designed by one of my students. He's here. Can talk about that. This is going to be our logo. That's in logo of the software that we're talking about. All right, so this is the key acknowledgement again, key resource person. Somebody from Airport Authority of India, Chennai, his name is Suraj, probably some of you may be knowing, the Joint General Manager, something there. So he is actually very instrumental to us in the sense of just telling us where to locate the information, that's all. Because Airport Authority actually publishes a lot of good information in the website only. So which information you find in which website, or whether you find in IATA website, or ICA website, or Airport Authority website, or DGC website, where you find that. So that information was quickly given to us by Suraj, and hence we really gratefully acknowledge his contribution. Okay, because otherwise we could have still done it, but could not have done rapid progress. That's more important. Right? So we could have actually getting stuck with that and things like that. So this helps us quite a bit. And Balakrishnan, he is from Honeywell. He is actually a very good software expert. So developing a commercial grade software like this requires a lot of software architecture, software security, software API management, all sort of things, right? How do you go about language selection, interaction between different database and architecture and front end, back end, all sort of things, right? So that contribution is really a lot from Balakrishnan. Rajesh Dave, he is again from Honeywell. He has contributed immensely of procedures and all that. He is actually involved in the CSAR program. So he has a lot of insight to what can be done here. Anyway, so motivator and mentor of all, this is what I was talking about, Dr. P.K. Menon. He was my motivator for a long time and mentor for a long time also. He's the one who has been telling me to do something about it. And in fact, he has strong collaboration with NASA about this particular issue, ATM issue. And then before going to US, he was actually working with Dr. Kalam also in ISRO. So that is what the background basically. But anyway, he has done a lot of work along with NASA on this topic. And he has also created a software called Linux and all that. We have got a copy of that also. All right, so this is our workforce. They are all here. You can talk to them. Only Nitya has gone ahead and joined Airbus recently about 2 months back. But the rest of the 4 people are right here in the first table. You can talk to them after the talk. And they will actually, some of you if you are interested in, they will give you first-hand experience of the software. Okay, right now. Okay, we've got software loaded into the laptop. Anybody wants to play around with that software, you can actually certainly do it right here in this room. All right, so this is what it is. So these two, I mean, are backend people. Doesn't mean the backend means really backend, not something like that. All computations and all happen in backend. So that is called backend. And then these two are actually front-end people. In other words, what the ITC people see in the display, that is what is front-end. So that part is kind of nicely divided also. And they have their own contributions as well. There are certain things overlapping. Of course, there are overlapping issues. And there are certain things individually done as well. So you can see that all these things are actually done. And some of the glimpse of that I'm going to tell. It's not possible to tell everything in 45 minutes, but hopefully I'll try to do something about it. All right, so when you start this work like this, somewhere this middle person is getting control. That's okay, you can live with me that way. Some technical glitch is always there. Anyway, so this is what is workflow. When you start something like this from zero, in fact, we have no experience on this at all before we started. I was deeply involved in DRDO project, ISRO project, and things like that. So that kind of a story we have actually. In fact, some aircraft, UAVs and all that we are doing. But this kind of project, it was completely new, so we had to start with some planning and analysis. And this is where the literature survey and brainstorming is necessary. That is why we had a good 1 or 2 days of workshop in our IIS before pandemic. And Captain Sinath also gave a talk about Bangalore airport management there. So that was kind of brainstorming, you can see that way. So started with that and the literatures and all that. And then you talk about design and development. Of course, you have to do a lot of code development, documentation, things like that. Then software testing is very much essential because you cannot talk about the very sanity of everything from the beginning. So testing will figure it out, a lot of issues there, and then you have to validate that, again go back to that. You install it, and then deploy it, then test it out again, and then the cycle continues. So this cycle has happened about 2-3 rounds basically. So reasonably we are confident that even if there is an error, that error should be less. So what is called as beta testing, alpha testing, and all sort of things, right? That way. So we have done the beta testing only. Alpha testing is after you give it to somebody else. Inside in-house, we have done testing ourselves. All right. So when you start with this literature part of it, there were several literatures. So we started with this as a fundamental literature basically. That is developed by NASA. We call it the Future ATM Concept Evaluation Tool. That is actually documented very well, and this actually uses this kinematic-based trajectory prediction and all that. Okay? Then there is another one, en route traffic prediction and conflict avoidance. That is by 2001. Again, this is kinematic trajectory based. Similarly, you talk about 2-3 more, and this is actually a very good paper by Dr. Menon himself, which actually has some sort of a summary. It's a review paper, essentially. So it actually collects a lot of information and puts it to one place. So those of you are interested to start, probably I will recommend this paper as the first to go with. So you read this first and then go to other papers later. Then similarly, you can talk about other things like method of calculating aircraft flight trajectory in presence of wind, how to take care of wind effects and things like that. That is also available. It's a very recent journal by 2021, last year. All right, and then several things like that. But if we really talk about these 4-5 papers have been the basis of our work. Not that we don't have our own innovation. We do have our own thing also. But you have to start from somewhere, and that is what we started. And in fact, the very first one is the one that we started in a good way that way. That was our primary motivation. And this is the paper. It's very easy to read, about 5-6 pages only, not really very overwhelming paper. We can just read and understand what's going on rather easily, basically. Okay? So you can say it is developed by NASA, and then they have documented it pretty well.
Day dawns.
Okay. So before I play this video, it's just about 1 minute or less than 1 minute video, which kind of gives you a glimpse of what the software is all about. Okay, and this is actually the basis of lot of ATM research in US. And in fact, lot of university research that goes on in US, they actually have this toolbox, and then they use their ideas and evaluate that. That is why it is called future ATM concept evaluation tool. So that is how it is floating around in US. In fact, they came to IIT and offered it to us also. But then we talked, okay, if at all we are going to use it, then we are going to solve US airspace problem. We are not going to solve our problems. Right? That is one thing. Second motivation was there were a lot of restrictions basically. So because it is coming from NASA, then they will put restrictions on us, and we cannot, being an academic institute, we cannot live with all sort of restrictions basically. We are so-called free birds basically, right? We love to fly openly. So anyway, so that is what it is. Now coming back.
Day dawns. Traffic starts to build up on the East Coast. At 8 a.m., half of the country is bubbling with traffic, while the other half is still sleeping. Flights are seen moving westward, and the airspace gets populated with aircraft across the country as the day progresses. Around 11 a.m., a steady stream of arrivals is seen coming across the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, this is a long video. You can actually go to YouTube or NASA website and figure it out. 4-5 minutes video is there. And this is obviously not playing in real time, right? It's about 100 times more or 300 times more. That's what is happening. So that is what it is. But it gives you a picture of what's really happening. And these trajectories that they are popping up is pretty realistic, by the way. Okay, it's not really unrealistic, it is happening one way and things like that. They're pretty realistic what's going on. And it is not really something the flight recorded data playing. That's also I want to tell you. The flight recorded data playing is fine. That you can always do. But then this is actually the software playing by itself. And that is validated properly. So this is okay. That is one thing that we got inspired from that. But one thing that you can notice here is the UI part is not really very powerful. It is written in Fortran, okay, whatever it is, okay, and it is running in the desktop, and that is why the display is not really very powerful. So what we really realize is the display needs to be something like this, so that all of you, the TC people, can actually really correlate to that. But then this is also not very good visual thing. This is what the public will want, right? The flight radar 24 actually superimposes the trajectory with a realistic looking aircraft view, and then there is a Google map on that. So you can very clearly see what is going on, and that is what is getting displayed in our flight computers, right? When we fly, and in front of that when you display, that is the display. We know very easily right now. So this is what we thought is, okay, this is one way, that is other way. Why not have both, right? We will give the choice to the user both ways. So that is one of the major decision-making things. So then we went back to the facet one, what the facet does. So this actually captures everything in a nutshell. This is what is happening there. And now you can see that first of all, there are a lot of databases, right? You have to talk about several databases. First thing is like your airspace database, like your airport location, seat star location, things like that, whatever it is, and the flight routes and all that. And then you need to talk about flight plan and schedule data, then for aircraft performance data, then wind data, all sort of database. So this database collection happens to be one of our first journey. How do you collect these databases in the context of Indian airspace? After you do that, what happens is this route navigation procedural thing. Airspeed dynamics, altitude kinematics, latitude longitude kinematics, these all need to be bound together. And that is our traditional strength. This is nothing basically. When you talk about flight dynamics is much more complicated than kinematics. So what is getting used is kinematics, so we are very comfortable with that part. What we are not comfortable with is how to collect the data first, so that you can integrate that. And then for coming to the performance data, you have to correlate with flight number so and so, with which flight, and that flight belongs to whether Airbus 320 or what it is, and what is the aircraft performance basically, right? What is the climb rate, descent rate, things like that, turning rate like that. So that is actually nicely captured in something called BADA database, base of aircraft data basically. So that is what you have got it from Eurocontrol basically. Okay. So this is what it is, and then eventually it goes to graphical user. This is where the front end part of it is. So you got bunch of database, you got several procedures, and then eventually you have to display. That is all what that matters. So now how do you go one by one at a time? So that is what we first started with, some sort of database, And you know several databases actually, right? So some of the databases are static, some of the databases are dynamic. For example, flight schedule keep on changing every year, every 6 months, like that. So whatever keeps on changing, as long as the project is operational, we keep on changing. Okay, so every time there is a new database, we keep on updating that. So that is latest update, you can see some of that. And some of these things are actually static database, right? Waypoints, seed star map, things like that, these are all static database. So that is how it is. You can see a lot of data things are getting done. We had some problem about wind data. Wind database is not really very accessible to us in that sense. We started with something called OGI Met database. And then we are in talk with IITM right now to get into the real-time wind data. Right? Remember, in a model like this, what we really need is not the data that happened already. That is anyway necessary. What we need is a prediction model. That means what the wind is going to come in next 4 hours. That is more important. Okay? So not only we need the data, but we also need a small model which will accurately predict the wind pattern for next 4 hours. That's what we are talking about. And we are able to get that also. Very soon we'll get it. The data will come to our server from IITM Pune, and then we'll be able to integrate that as well. Okay? So this is how the database looks like. All of you must be very, very familiar with this. So this is the airspace database, this is the flight schedule, this is the performance database, things like that basically. And these are huge, by the way. They are not really just one small table like that. Each of the database will run into one report sort of thing. And this has to be integrated. First you have to convert it to electronic form, because many of these are PDF forms, that's all. So you PDF to Excel file to database thing. That's what you have done basically. So everything has been converted like that. Right now it is all sitting in the database basically. All right. After that, so these are the typical maps that you have regularly come across. This is the seed star map of Delhi Airport. And then by now we know that 12 airports are like that. So all the 12 airports of India, we have collected the seed star map and electronically converted that. Not necessarily just the point, but the restrictions at that point. What should be the altitude restriction? What should be the velocity restriction? Things like that, right? So those things are all documented in our database already. All right, so this is what it is, and this is all taken from kind of open literature. This is Airport Authority of India is very good in that. So I have actually published many of that. So it's a matter of putting them together. So that is what I was waiting somewhere. So now we went back to that and then talk about, well, after we collected all the database, how do kind of talk about this kind of thing, route navigation, heading dynamics, and things like that. Remember that what we are not doing here is direct routing. The FACET SQL allows us to direct routing. This pre-flight sort of thing, right? To take off from where somewhere, land somewhere, that kind of thing. So direct routing is not there, so we are not interested in that. We are not doing that. But other than that, we are almost everything is done. So this is what in a nutshell, what it looks like. But we are a little bit fond of mathematics anyway. so what this is not really very much complicated at all. Okay? All that we are looking at is just a couple of equations like this, the latitude equation, longitude equation, and then altitude equation. That's all. Lat, lon, altitude. That's the position of the aircraft, right? You talk lat, lon, altitude, position done. And then in a cruise flight, you don't even need the altitude. Only 2 is good enough. Only takeoff landing, we need the altitude. That is how it is. So, but bottom line, you see, databases, all these databases are there. And that will kind of nicely couple with all that. And that is where our domain knowledge comes into picture, right? The aerospace, we are all aerospace people. So we roughly know about what you are talking about, kinematics, dynamics, things like that. All right, so let me not dwindle about it. This is all done. Then not only we have done only this basic equations, now it is fidelity improvement. And once you put the basic equation, how close it is to reality, right? That's it. So whatever the pilots actually do, that has to be mimicked somehow. So how do you mimic that? You need to know some procedures basically, right? First procedure is something like heading and speed kinematics. So what pilots do is something like they give this calibrated airspeed command, right? CAS command for some time, and after that they switch over to Mach command. Okay? Initially they give CAS command, and after some cruise altitude nearby, they switch over to Mach, and then they can come back to CAS. Okay, that's it. But CAS is something that you see in the instrument. What is actual flight? Is something called true airspeed, right? So true airspeed is a function of calibrated airspeed and altitude. And what is that function? This is the function. So those are the things that actually has to be coded into the software to see the reality part of it. Similarly, when you talk about heading terms, normally all the commercial aircraft will go through coordinated flight, right? There is nothing called flight to turn. It's all bank to turn, right? which is teach in flight dynamics anyway. So all coordinated turn, when you talk about the corresponding bank angle and rudder deflection, all that is done properly, so that there is no skidding effect. And so that is actually done this way. You can see that, okay, there is a 3 degree per second turn and things like that. So a little bit of improvement can still be done. Some little bit improvement still pending. So right now we are kind of assuming instantaneous things like that. But these procedures are actually there in the software. That's the bottom line. So this is not ignored basically. Now come to this one. So when you go to the database, that's what I was talking. At a certain below certain altitude, transition altitude, you give a cap command. After that, you switch over to mac command. You can see that in the Bada database, it's all captured like this. So now 310 is the speed. After some time, after the altitude is the flight level is reached 280, then it is actually switched over to mac command. So this is actually in a software you have to do all that basically. So you could wait until that point in time, then switch over to mac command. So similarly, you can do what is altitude by the way. So if you really talk about 4,000 meter or 4 kilometer altitude, below that, there is sea level doesn't matter so much. Right? You have to talk about actual altitude. But beyond that, beyond 4,000, typically mountains are gone. So we have to now talk about a universal altitude. That is these kind of things are actually there in the software. That is why it is fidelity improvement. How it is supposed to be. All right. So this is gas max transition. There is altitude transition, and then there is something called carving procedure. What is carving procedure? This is done by FMS automatically in the aircraft. All aircrafts are directionally stable. So unless you do something about it, even though your flight path is point by point, waypoint 1 to waypoint 2, your flight will get aligned with that. Okay? Your aircraft will get aligned to the wind because that's the minimum drag basically, right? So the aircraft is designed like that. But you are not allowed to fly like that. So essentially what you do, you introduce purposefully the side slip angle so that you actually can fly through the corresponding path. So this procedure is called carving procedure. So essentially, the FMS does that itself without pilots knowing, without also you knowing basically. That's what you are more interested in sticking to that path. So somehow it sticks to that path, right? What is done there, this is what is done. So this is where we need the wind data, okay? Because depending on the wind, we have to talk about how much compensation you have to do. Now what happens to this? The moment you start doing this little bit side slip, then what happens? Your headwind, tailwind is different. So when headwind, tailwind is different, you fly with a different ground speed. So that is why your lat long change will matter basically, right? So those things are actually there as part of it. So this is what is done. This is how it is taken care. I'll not get to the math part of it. Those of you interested, you can talk to us a little later after this talk. But the whole idea is wind effect is taken into the account already in the software. It's a matter of putting the realistic wind after that. Okay, so that's what you are trying to do here. All right, so this is how it is done. So now when you started the wind effect, remember the wind is not continuously measured and things like that. Wind is measured at the wind stations, ground stations, weather stations basically. So how do you talk about an efficient way of interpolation? And that interpolation is a function of kind of location, geographic location as well as altitude, right? So you have to talk about a good expert in meteorology, which is part of our team also in some sense. He told this procedure. You have to talk about decouple that to east and north, and then talk about altitude, then talk about interpolation, then combine it together. And then on the process of that, you have to talk about something like 4D interpolation. Okay, so these are the math details. These are all technical details part of it. But the whole idea here is all these things are actually done in the software. Backend, that is why the backend is quite powerful. So this is the final architecture that we talked about. So we have got this so many databases here. Left hand side you can see schedule, flight data, weather data, all sort of things. Then we talked about an ATM library, air traffic model library. Then object module, then something like API, and then finally user interface. So whatever happens in this side of the story, sitting on the terminal, you will not know. What you are bothered about is what happens in the final display, right? That's what you are bothered about. So, but that prediction part will become accurate only when the backend is accurate. That's the bottom line. So that is what it is. Then it is actually, I can also tell a little bit that this is actually done in a very efficient way. We had a lot of debate whether which language to code. We started with MATLAB, went to Python, then finally decided no, these are all not happening. We just need to do C++. We went to C++, and now C++ is very, very efficient, right? So it is happening in multi-thread environment and things like that. That actually gives a lot of efficiency. And then front end was OpenGL, and then all these things were there. And this is okay. After doing all that over a period of time, because this is not happening overnight. It took almost 2 years to reach this. What I told you just now. In the process of the journey, we actually had an advisory panel. So this advisory panel, I constituted myself. There was not a requirement of imprint or anything. I just thought, okay, we need some input here. So these are the people from airport authority, some people from IMD. This is what I was talking about. He has given that idea of how to interpolate wind and all that. Then somebody from NL, he was the external director. And then there's something like NTU Singapore. They have done some work in NTU Singapore, Nanyang Institute of Technology. They have actually done a good amount of work with dynamic factorization and things like that in Singapore. So that I thought some comments from them will be good. Then IITM Pune, and then finally our motivators from US. So these are the committees that actually reviewed our work every 6 months and then guided us like what to do next, like the things like that. And if you see the meetings, these were happening like 3 times it happened. And after this January meeting this year, we are very confident that this is at the time where we can actually reveal the information to airport authority. So we went there with a lot of appointments, things like that. And before that, there were some these comments. Whatever comments came, in a nutshell, you can summarize like this: there were several back-end improvements, and there are several front-end improvements. I'm not going to read one by one. So out of the comments that we received, all these works were carried out. It is not just listening and forgetting. We just sit down there and understand and then try to do something about it. So we had to talk about this gas mag transition, pressure runway altitude transition, something like initially international routes and schedules were not there. Slowly we introduced all that also. And then of course live traffic data is also important, right? It's not about models. If your ADSB or radar is giving you something, from there onwards, that is actually reinitialized. That means while the software is running, you will be able to integrate the live data also. And that is where from there onwards it is much more realistic, right? So that is how it is. That provision is already there, and we also talked a little bit of resource on arrival manager using this something called mixed integer programming and things like that. That's the math intensity part of it. So we'll be able to efficient. So your computer server is going to tell you which aircraft to go next or which aircraft to come next, basically. So that's scheduling part of it. So that was done in some sort of a mixed integer programming. Now coming to the front end part of it, it is also sector selection, load display, time selection, visualization layer, flight selection, all sort of things are there. I'm going to give a glimpse of that. So we went there, and this is a glimpse of that. This is what the actual visualization, and our visualization pretty close to that. Okay, it is not really extremely close because the color matching, all that becomes a problem. But you can see that migration from this to this is not really that way. And color changes, suppose it is really needed like that, then we can certainly do that. It's not a big deal. So this is what it is. Now I'm going to play 1 minute video of what we did. Okay, and after that we'll continue the journey.
This is the home screen of the user interface, which is made into a totally menu-driven interface. Each layer can be enabled or disabled by the user. There is also a switchable option between the terrain mode and the radar mode. And the rest of the options, like the state boundaries, the country boundaries, are individually controlled by the user. There is a click function which is incorporated into the software. That is, when the user clicks on a particular flight, the flight gets highlighted and the information display pops up, which shows the details of the particular flight, the flight number, the flight type, and also the origin and destination airport, along with some flight statistics, like the altitude, the task gas max speed, and the heading angle of the particular flight. This click function is not only applicable for flights, this is also applicable for sectors. In order to select a sector, we need to go to the sector selection mode and click on a particular sector. As you can see, the sector gets highlighted and there is a pop-up display which shows the name of the sector and the current mode of the particular sector. The zoom in functionality and the zoom out functionality, and also the click and drag functionality, which enables the user to focus on a particular area of simulation.
All right, so this is where we felt very confident that we have done something, that wow factor sort of thing, right? Then we thought, okay, it's time to do something. But this story is not over yet, by the way. Okay, this is the intermission, basically, sometimes you can say that way. Then we went to go there, we thought, okay, why not visiting where it matters, right? All decision making happens at headquarters anyway. So we talked about visiting there, 2 days of that, 2 days before, we made an official visit, and then gave a presentation there, met with the chairman also a little bit, and then visited several facilities. And I'm not just telling, I will give you proof of the visit, right? The motivation was the exact picture of what is HPC work progress. What are the requirements of AI? Are we really working isolated, that we are getting motivated from literature only, talking to people only, or really the people matter, who actually can use the software later, do their input matters, right? That's it. And then input for further development, basically. So this is what we visited, CITFM, SEC, and PCT. And the proof for this visit is here. Okay, all right. We went there and had a lot of fun time, lot of learning time also. So fun and learn together, basically that way. And this is not Nimisa is here. I don't know where you see, but she is here somewhere. Okay, so I don't know where it is. Okay, but this is what we did, and then we learned a lot. This is what is done in that area control, the terminal control, and things like that. So eventually, what we came to know, I mean, this is how it looks like from the ATC Delhi. The tallest tower probably, and then you can see the panoramic view of the entire airport basically. All right, so we had our own piece of learning, and when we came back, we actually learned 2 things. One is that software that is getting used in Delhi airport is the Brazilian software called Skyflow. And this Skyflow has a lot of good features also. Let us not talk about it. Okay, so there's all software will have some positive or negative things. But what is good about this software is the good amount of display part and good amount of response time, the very fast response. Okay? So So that is what is web-based server client architecture and capacity. There are some decision-making things. They can actually talk about capacity handling measures. And what we are talking here, capacity measuring will measure this particular feature that is getting used is going to be a tiny subset of what you are talking about. I'm not taking credit of that, but our dream is much, much bigger than that. So what capacity enhancement will certainly be part of it. But what we have to do is our software is not really can match it for the response part of it and the visualization part of it. So this is where you need to improve this. Similarly, when you talk about Indra software, this is the software that is getting used in the day of operation, right? Skyflow is the previous day of operation, and that too happening beyond only Delhi airport, right? Not any other airport is not there. There is some problem for that also. Like if you couple of the things that's getting problem there. So anyway, but that what we really learned from that, Indra software is also server client. So both Skyflow and Indra is a server client architecture. That's a bad necessity because many of you have to work on the software together. Okay? So that is what we talked about. And then this was a really big call again. Like the programming language selection call, we have to throw everything and switch over to a new program. So anytime you do that in academic environment, we are always afraid because if you start doing that, two of the students will come next day and tell, okay, now I'm leaving. Okay, you do it, whatever you do, I'm not interested actually. But I think we have got a very strong motivated team here, and thanks to all of them. Probably they have been very cooperative there, and we took a collective decision of shifting there altogether. And what you see in April 1st this year, so don't consider it April Fool's Day, but we actually took a decision after coming back that we need to do it, and we will do it. And that is not a joke. In other words, you have to really migrate everything that you have done, and on top of it, you have to put something more. Okay, so that is what you have done. And then important insights, like I told, is a big learning is server client architecture. It's a centralized system. It is simultaneous multiple requests, highly scalable. Now we are talking about 500 people can work with the software together with a free version. If you take paid version, you can have 5,000 people also, no problem. And response time will be very, very good. That is why those people are managing, right? The Skyflow and other things, they are managing that way only. And then we'll talk about easy to assess things. This is what it is. And eventually we talked about something called MonStack. MonStack is something software oriented again. So there is something called Mongo database, Express layers. Essentially you're talking about JavaScript programming now. Okay? So again, from C++, now we talk about JavaScript. So this is something that we did. And then actually you can see that this Meta, Uber, PayPal, Google, all that they use. So obviously they are giants basically, right? So they know what to do basically. So that is how we talk about doing that. And then Mongo database offers several advantages. This is something that we could migrate, whatever we had standalone version, desktop version to migration, that is possible. On top of that, now you have to talk about authentication thing. And then where you talk about authentication based on the employee info, users biometry, things like that. So you can do all that. And then you can also talk about realistic win data, for which we are in touch with ATM right now. So essentially now we are using JavaScript, C++, and Python, all the things, three things together. And the front-end part of it, instead of OpenGL, now it has gone to WebGL basically. Okay? So WebGL is actually, on any browser you can do it. So it is a kind of platform independent. Okay, so that is what it is. So these are also used by various companies like that. All right, so the web version is something like client, and then there is a big server. And server does all sorts of things, and that server does many, many things. Right? I'm not going to read it again, but this is what the server is. There is a big database on the top, and there is a client there. So this is the database part of it. And once the request comes from any client, it is kind of digged out, whether you can directly take it from database or you have to do some computation and then take it database. Take it to the display basically. Okay? So both are possible. If it is directly available, then you directly grab it from the database. So you don't have to compute anything. But if it is not available, you do the computation and then take it out. Okay? So this is a combination of what I call as buffet plus a la carte. Okay? Buffet part is already ready, and then you can order something, right? When you order something not ready, you have to cook and supply basically. That way. So this is the architecture. It's very efficient because of that, right? If something is already available, you don't want to recompute it. Directly take it out. All right, so this is what it is. So then you talk about, well, user interface, something like there is a user interface, there is a computation unit, and there is a display unit, and there is something like threading culture basically, right? So you've got thread 1 will compute the route generator. So if once you file a flight plan, the flight plan, waypoints and all will file a route. So that itself is a thread. Then you talk about trajectory generator, the actual trajectory of the aircraft, that's another route, another thread. Then you talk about thread 3 is the graphics part of it. So this is all the things that is getting efficiently merged together. So this is again the MonStack philosophy that we are putting. So previously what we had a standalone architecture, now it is operating on a server client architecture. Previously, we had a desktop version. Now we have got a web-based version. Previously, we had file system, lot of Excel files, lot of Excel files essentially with databases and all that, which is not very efficient. Now we have got a database management system, and we are using this so-called Mongo database. Remember, Mongo is humongous database. That's why the name stands for Mongo database. Okay. And then you talk about previously OpenGL. Now we are talking about Monster application. We also have this Mapbox sort of thing. Mapbox is like Google Maps, more or less. But Mapbox has the paid version of that, free version of that, like that. You can get a Google Map sort of feeling basically there. Okay, then C++ building using CMake, and now we are using C++ with DLL in the Node.js and all that. So these are something that I also don't understand very well, if you ask me honestly. You can ask the real developers who are sitting there, right? That they can tell you more. All right, so there's a testing cycle involved. Testing you start with, found some issues. Extensively, once you find the issue, you do the testing, find the issue. But when you find the issue, do not do symptomatic medicine. You have to really do root cause medicine, basically. That means you have to really find out which is actually causing that error and then fix that error. Extensive testing needed for that. Then report issues, then root cause analysis, and finally, generic remedial measures. In other words, suppose there is a IATA code got replaced by ICAO code, then is there somewhere else that is same mistake is happening? Okay, so there are various columns, right, for IATA code, ICAO code, things like that. If one place you find a mistake, the search out for everything is. So then only you can locate, and then in fact we do all that. Once you fix the issues, are you done? Certainly not. You have to really come back and do the cycle again. Okay, because that is why 2-3 rounds you do, then you okay, nothing coming up, then you are okay probably. So that is called beta testing. That's why you're done. And then of course they talk about there are several things, several issues found. This is not tell whatever issues found. In fact, much more is 65, 70 issues found. Little things when you convert these PDF files to get to database, somewhere some error, typo mistake, copy paste mistake, some null mistake, something like that, right? So all these things are found, and we can actually correct that also. It's almost like industry-grade software development, even though it's happening in an academic institute. So this is what it is: resolved and retested, resolved and retested. Now remember, there are functional testing, there are database testing also. So eventually, when you are done that, let us play that software now a little bit here. Is it playing? No, it's not playing for some reason. I don't know. Playing or not playing. Can you click that? Can you click on that? Click on click on that. No, wait. Just click a little bit on. There's a click mouse there. No? But this is the bottom part of main part of it. No, it's not playing somehow. Can I go there and play? Just click a little bit, no?
It's not working, sir.
Not working? Okay, not working probably for some reason. Of course, I have to see also. That's okay, we'll come back to that. Essentially, this is the latest version that we have. It was a good thing to see, but somehow we didn't test it well probably. So that is another testing requirement before coming to the presentation probably. Okay. Not working, right? No, because I'm using the pointer. You can take out the pointer and then you can talk about this. You can just escape that, escape the presentation. Yeah, can you go there and then try to play that? Okay. Yeah, play that. Yeah.
Welcome to the air traffic model or airspace of India. In short. Welcome to the air traffic model or airspace of India. In short, ATM. This is the home screen of the simulation software where the user can put his credentials and log into the system. Once the user logs in, he will get 3 major views, namely the map view, the terminal area view, and the airport view. Coming to the map view. In the map view, the user can visualize and simulate the airspace on a particular date and in a particular time boundary. Once the user gives the time boundaries and gives the date and he starts simulation, the airspace gets simulated on that particular day with that particular time. The time of simulation is also shown. This map view is built into several visual layers, namely the country boundaries, the state boundaries, the FIR, the sector boundaries, the danger and restricted zones, to name a few. Each layer is individually controlled by the user. Apart from that, there is also a toggleable option between the terrain mode and the radar mode. In the terrain mode, we have used a Google Map like terrain in order to give a better view for the user. Apart from the visual layers, there are also optional features which are available. Firstly, the phase-based filtering. There are 3 major phases that compare the two phases of the recent phase for a particular set. The user can choose level built-in, there is also capability of playback control, that is the PAS call. The user can pause the simulation according to their needs. Also, the user can also control the speed of simulation ranging from 1x to 300x. By default, the speed is set to 30x for real-time. Apart from that, there is also a sector-level selection. From all the available sectors which are there in the Indian airspace, the user can choose one of them. And the user interface zooms into that particular sector and highlights all the flights which are there. Apart from this, there is also this functionality which is incorporated in the software. That is, when a user clicks on a particular flight, the flight gets highlighted and also a flight information window pops up which shows the details about that particular flight, like the origin and destination, and accompanied with some flight statistics like the CAST and max speed with the current altitude and also the indicator of that particular aircraft. When the user zooms in after a particular level, all the flights on the screen shows the label of the particular flight altogether. This gives the dynamic speed to the user. This map view is parallelly incorporated with the list view. In the list view, as you can see, the flights which are getting simulated in the map view is coming in a tabular format in the list view, and the data is continuously getting updated as it is on the map view. In the airport view, the user can see and manage all the airports which are currently there in the Indian airspace. All the arrivals and the departures for that particular day in that particular airport can be seen on this view. The terminal area view is currently under development and will soon be updated with many new features which we plan to incorporate in the software. So, this was our software air traffic model which we built in order to simulate the Indian airspace in a predictive manner. Stay tuned for more.
All right, thanks a lot. So this is what we are talking. But having said that, what you are talking about is can you develop a software in-house, make in India, here in IIC, whatever the number one institute, whatever it is, which will be a combination of both Cyclo and Indra together. So you select what you want to do, but then of course we understand that implementation will not happen overnight. It will take its own evaluation time, own piggyback time, evaluation time, display time, all sort of things are there. So we are now talking about something that can be done in a very efficient way. But before that, we talk about validation. It is only about display or something validation, right? The display is good, feels good, all the I think but how does it validate? So we really took the flight level data and then talk about some sort of validation there. It turns out if it is a longer flight, Madras to Delhi, Bangalore to Delhi, these are all good. If it is a short duration flight, Bangalore to Chennai, for example, those things are not really working well. There are a lot of ATC diversion or whatever that kind of thing. Now, if you see all that, we talk about something like 4-5 minutes of kind of mean value and about 3 minutes of variation on the sigma. Mean and sigma, you can see all that very good, right? So that is what is happening there. And this is the scope of improvement that comes out here is, first of all, the wind data needs to be proper. Because wind is something the aircraft sees and something the simulation sees, that's not good, right? So that is why you're talking about getting a realistic wind prediction model from the IITM, Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in Pune. And then you talk about access to approved flight plan, right? If you really talk about flight schedule is one thing, but really the approved flight plan is the plan in which the aircraft flies. We all know that. But approved flight plan will come to us only with active collaboration with airport authority. Before that, it is not going to come to us, right? So that is what we are hoping for the best, that we will be able to do that quickly, so that we can really talk about MOU with the airport authority, and then we can talk about implementing the approved flight plan, and that is what is going to improve the accuracy much better. And then, of course, we will never be able to do the latest interventions that you talk to the pilot, go up, come down, go sideways, whatever you talk about. Those talkings are voice recorded. But what we are talking now is, can we really talk about a man-machine interface software somewhere, which will actually convert these voice commands and then be available in the electronic form, and then it can come to the simulation software. So that is what we are talking about. So these are all going forward with together. All right. So this is for the scope of improvement. Again, we had this revision reviews and things like that. So last time we met with as recent as 11th July, just about 2 months back, basically. So everything looks good. There were some improvement suggestions as well. We are talking about fidelity and capability improvement first. The no-fly zones and realistic wind models will be quickly implemented. Then arrival departure optimization will be done. That is, some work has already been started. It is not about simulation, but decision making too. It is not that automatically it will go into the aircraft, but it will come to your decision. You approve it or discard it. That is your choice. But you don't have to think 100 times, right? What needs to be done? The software will suggest you what kind of options basically. You select A, B, C, D, out of which whichever is best, you give it to them. So that is that kind of a thing. So first thing what you are talking about is conflict detection and resolution. Like online, whenever the two waveforms are going almost a similar way, and there is a node point there, right? There's a kind of intermediate point, and then it goes to that waypoint. And then if there is a conflict, then how do you do it? How do you resolve it? Can we not do it automatically? Again, that suggestion will come to you. You just have to approve it. And once the system operates that mode, manually it comes and you approve, there's nothing that to discard, then of course your job is in danger later. Okay? Right? In other words, there can be fully automation, and then probably you are not required. Don't tell it like that. We normally don't talk about kind of automation system to the extent that doctors are not required. What we really talk about is same doctor can treat many patients in the same time. That means the same ATC people, without enhancing the capability, you can now talk about 25,000 aircraft comfortably. Should not happen. You should not be afraid about it. That means we initially started, instead of 5,000 become 25,000. What will you do? This is what will you do. The software is going to tell you suggestions, right? So that is where the decision making is going to be much better. So first of all, what we are talking about is GDP, and GDP doesn't mean gross domestic product. What it means? Ground display program, ground delay program. So what is like Cyclo, right? Cyclo is doing ground delay program. So what you are talking about is, can we really do that for capacity handling? And then on top of that, unlike Cyclo, we now talk about sector load management also. Cyclo talks about only terminal management, right? So now we talk about sector load management as well. So now eventually these things will go to something big thing which is called 4D trajectory optimization. Not only the points, but the latitude, longitude, altitude, that counts with time also. That defines the complete trajectory. So trajectory of each and every aircraft can be optimized, and that is the big thing that is happening all over, what's called 4D trajectory optimization. That is something called next generation ATC basically. That's bottom line. So if you really compare where we stand, this is what we started with, asset, but this is what the airport authority is using, Cyclo and Indra, and this is our software that is getting developed. You can see in a nutshell, in a single chart, where we are, and these are trajectory prediction, the radar display, sector visualization, all these things, whatever you see in the left-hand side, some of these are already done, and some of these things will be done very quickly. That's the promise that I kind of make today also. And then cross-platform is not there. Asset operates only in Linux. Cyclo operates only in Windows, and then Indra operates only in Linux again. But our thing can operate both equally. So depending on your convenience, you can do it with that. So this is what is getting done. So a lot more work needs to be done, but so far so good, right? All of these things can be done in 2-3 years time. That's what we see. All right, that's the summary of ATMA of India, a high-fidelity realistic simulation model. Backend operates with C++ with multi-threading. Frontend operates with WebGL. So essentially fast simulation, easy interface, easy usage, things like that. And then database uses several databases. I will summarize all that. Airport location, runway directions, route to waypoint, star map, flight schedule, flight in performance data, wind data, things like that. And then you talk about, no-fly zones, static and dynamic being included, and also validation of real-time functionality near Bangalore. We have got our own ADSB in lab, by the way. So that data we are getting. So using that data, we want to validate. Suppose our software, can the software do a better job with it? So that is what we are going to test it next. All right, so major utilities of ATMA, if you can see summarized in a slide, it can also solve something like ATC simulator for training. And then we can also talk about this ground delay program for capacity handling, plus sector load management. And also you can talk about predictive conflict alert system first, not then resolution system next. And then you also talk about accurate ETA. ETA is what? Expected time of arrival. And also new flight plan. When the airlines have to fly the new flight plan, can the flight plan be suggested to them? Instead of their making it and you discarding or accepting, can it be suggested to them? Something like that. And with all this, whatever work we have done, now we are thinking about how to actually make use of it. It is not just the kind of academic research leading to publication, things like that. Can we really use it? And the way of utilizing it is actually through company. And I was suggested by your chairman that can you tie up with an IT company in Bangalore, because Bangalore is famous for IT capital of India, right? So can you suggest, can you tie up with some IT company and then develop it to a commercial grade software? What our logic is, why to tie up with a company? We can create a company ourselves. Okay? That is what we are talking about, and that is what we are talking about. Okay? We name it as RPSAT. Okay, that's our common kind of understanding. RPSAT stands for Robust Precision Smart Air Traffic Solution. That you can say, big thing, whatever it is. And this is going to do all that, whatever we are talking about, provided the subsequent journey that we are going to talk next 2-3 years is done in close collaboration with the airport authority. That's what we are expecting the most. And then, of course, this is our plan, year 1, year 2, year 3, and 4. By year 5 to 7, by 2030, when the traffic is going to be more, then our software is also equally capable. It is going to show you decisions as well. So that is what we will be working together if you cooperate with us, and we cooperate also, by the way. So this is all happens together. Then we can actually crack this problem in a very good way. So with that message, probably I would like to stop here. We need a lot of kind of collaboration with Airport Authority of India going forward. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to your headquarters again. I'm again meeting with your chairman on 9th, this September 9th. And from there onwards, probably this will become a reality. We'll set up a company there, and then rest of the development can happen in the company mode also, so that our PhD students can stay back also. Otherwise, they will find their own job and go back. And that's a common dream that we share among our students and our students. So overall summary again, there is exponential growth of air traffic. So reactive ATC must go towards predictive ATM, and no major ATM R&D activity in India. That's where we saw an opportunity. And then previous effort we are doing in our place to develop ATMA software, or something called ATMA software, which is kind of a tailor-made Indian space, basically, right? It is a software made for India, made in India, made by India for India, basically, right? We can say that way. All right. So that variety of problems will solve. It's just not there is an impression in headquarters that we are only talking about a simulation software. I think, sorry, you are probably misunderstood us. We started the motivation is optimal control, which is decision making. We needed a model. The model was not, like facet was not available here, and hence we wanted to do it. But what is our main motivation? To go back to our comfort domain and then talk about decision making, dynamic decision making. That is what we are talking about. So our next phase of the thing will also talk about several decision making things. So something like scheduling, conflict avoidance, sequential quadratic analysis, and then all sort of other things that we talk about, ground delay program, sector management program, things like that. That's going to be, it's coming. And then we call that, we dream that rather, this Atma of India can actually become Atma of India. Right? Or Atma of at least the ATC part of India. That's our dream. All right, so all stakeholders like Airport Authority and all interested parties are certainly invited to join. So with this message, I will rather stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was wonderful. We'll have our own Atma of India very soon. Best wishes from all of us. I would like to invite Habib, sir, to present a memento to the speaker. Sir, please. Thank you all for a patient hearing. Now we have our chief guest, Member of Parliament, Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy ji, is going to join us. He was ex-Civil Aviation Minister also. We are just waiting. Any moment he is entering the hall. Thank you.
I would like to welcome Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy, sir, to this seminar. We are honored to have you, sir, here. So, do you hardly need any introduction? Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy is a member of Parliament and ex-civil aviation minister. Sir is a trained pilot and holds a commercial pilot's license. He is featured in the Limca Book of Records as the only parliamentarian to fly a commercial aircraft, and he has the seat one day of Indigo Airlines. So thank you for coming, and I would like to request you to come on the stage and grace your presence and address the audience with a kind word. Thank you so much, sir. So please. And also, I would like to tell you that the notepads are available on the right side of your left side of the table. Anybody requiring the notepad and the pencil can have that. Thank you.
tell you where I am. I've got a very beautiful note prepared by JTC Delhi, where all the facts and figures are there. I'll dedicate some time to it and let them speak up. Figures, how many short it is, how many this, that. So that note will be circulated and it will be considered as a speech on record by Rajan. So I'll skip that all the facts and figures much and right. But other than that, so when I was in college and my university, I completed my schooling in Patna. I went to Chandigarh and Punjab University. So Bihari Medical Chandigarh Punjab University. And then I became then I joined the NCC because I wanted to do flying. So I became an NCC cadet, and then they had the pilot aptitude battery test and whatnot. So I was finally chosen as an NCC cadet, and that was in the year 1978, 79. So that time Chandigarh did not have a flying club, so I used to go to Patiala. So I used to take my cycle to the city bus stand in Chandigarh, and from there take a city bus to Patiala, and from there take another city bus to Patiala, Aerodrome. And the whole day I would sit there outside. And since I was a small Bihari type of a character there sitting, they would give me 10 minutes, 20 minutes on a push bike. So the total time which I could cover in 3 months were about 2 hours. But anyway, I wanted to do it. And the most interesting was NCC used to pay me 100 rupees, 150 rupees as a TADA. So that became my earning source. So every time I used to go there, I used to find my expenses. So NCC would give me a lot of money that way, and that would take care of my lot of other activities in the hostel in Chandigarh. But unfortunately, an accident took place there where a cheetah helicopter collided with a pushpak. I do not know if anyone remembers. And we lost that helicopter of the Indian Army. And we also lost the pilots who were the trainee and the instructor. And the debris fell in the fields there near Patiala flying on a lady who was swimming in the field. So 5 people died and the flying was discontinued. So my flying was also discontinued. And then I completed, nothing happened in college. Then I went back to Bihar and I became an MLA there. God was kind at a very young age, and this is my 32nd year in active MLA and Member of Parliament. So when I went back to Bihar, I thought I am an MLA now, let's do my flying in the Bihar Flying Club. So this is a very interesting thing, and generally the Chief Minister of a state looks after that department. So when my application went to the Chief Minister for admission in the flying thing, he was now he's very elderly, and yes, he was Lalu Prasad Yadav. He said, no, Vidhayak, kya is a flying karega. But so he did not give me admission then. So 5 years I remained an MLA. Nothing happened. 1996 I got elected to Parliament. 98, 99, the same person who was denied, and in 99 I came back to Parliament again. And the gentleman who was not given an admission in the flying club becomes the civil aviation minister of this country. And 2001 I became the civil aviation minister of this country with Vajpayee. And I'll bring back something very interesting, which all of you are sitting in a beautiful hotel like here at Bangalore, and I was watching the four runways on both the sides. Something which will churn history. Then became the civil aviation minister 2004. We all relinquished government, we lost the government. So 2006, when I went back to Bihar, fortunately Nitish Kumar was then the chief minister. And after ceasing to be a minister of civil aviation, and from the Aero Club of India, I had given new planes to the Patna Flying Club as a minister. So that was a small compromise, and I was given admission in 2007. So whenever I used to land in Patna airport, the captain there, Shiv Prakash, whom I had got from Bombay, so he would keep the plane ready, so I get down, do my flight, go for my work, and whenever I used to catch a flight to Delhi, he would keep a flight ready, 30 minutes, and it went on for 4 years, and finally I could pass my exam for the CPL and became a, by 2008, I completed my CPL. 2010, I was a member of Parliament. I took special permission from Mr. Advani, who was the leader of the opposition then, and went to Miami and did my typewriting. I used to sleep in the class because time change was not suiting me. So So the captain used to teach me, used to got fed up of me. So instead of doing that course for 3 months, he did it in 1.5 months and sent me back. And was not very sure whether I will be able to fly planes or not. And 2010, and I have a record. Generally, youngsters make a record of becoming the youngest to get something. I was the oldest man in this country to get a CPA. And I got my CPL at the age of 50. So none of you have an impression that I have been a pilot. I was never a pilot. So this has to be categorically put on record that I was never a pilot. People thought because I was a civil aviation minister, I became a pilot. No. Then 2010, I had an offer from Indian Airlines and I had an offer from Indigo. So I joined as an honorary captain. And that is where I started. And after that, many kind of records, but I do not know whether they mean. But I am the only parliamentarian on the globe. I've made my effort to find out how it happens. So I am the only parliamentarian on the globe who is actually flying big planes, thanks to his captains of Indigo and other people. And I'm not gone in command. But there is a challenge to me that I should pick up my command also. So I have cleared one paper of ATPL. I'm waiting for the two to be cleared. So every day a slot of 1 hour. And a girl who teaches me is about 22 years. She gets fed up. She thinks this man doesn't understand anything. She's fed up out of teaching because I take so much of time to understand things. So my achievement, someday I would love, before I turn 65, I would definitely like to pick up command because I see the boys who were there in the jump seat behind. They come on the left seat where I am seated, and they finally go in command, I am still there. So finally, I am working hard to see that but I say I enjoy it because the responsibility is yours. So out of 100 flights, I will be pilot flying in 95. So that is mine. And it's wonderful flying the big planes, and it's something which is exhilarating. So this is what you call a mission. For me, it was a mission to become a pilot. It took me good 25 years to achieve what a youngster like them could achieve in a few years. But I'm happy I could do that. Now, coming back to something which I would like to place on record here. As a policy maker, I have been struggling when I have been parking the aircraft at Chandigarh. Chandigarh is a defense center. And they are created, and it's very funny, they put a gate. So you are civilian and you are Air Force the moment you move inside. And till date, I have been raising this question in a couple of standing committees and parliamentary committees. We are in 1920 or 30 where still the Chandigarh airport, after, I'm sure Sanjeev must have, he has heard me in the aviation committee ask the question. Why can't we have an ATC connect to park the aircraft? There we see someone waving at us. Chandigarh airport, after spending 1,000 crores, you cannot park the aircraft under the guidance of the ATC. You have to come in, watch that boy wave a flag to you, and then you say, he's standing there, and then you take. This is where we feel that policy makers, and many decisions have got done in the process, policy makers have to. Why does the defense not give them a frequency? And anyone, no one knows inside, the passengers do not know that despite spending 1,000 crores or 800 crores, that ATC controller there does not have a frequency where they can call up the captain. And that there are a lot of challenges which we have to face. But when we talk about infrastructure, I would just like to put 2 slides of history. How airlines in aviation, and if someone here could put those 2 slides to tell you that how policy decisions make a change in infrastructure. Now there are 2 letters which I somehow got it in my archive. And one of these letters and he says in that letter, 2003, that thank you, Mr. Rudy, as a civil aviation minister, for giving a level playing field to all the airlines, because the air marshals who were there, Air India used to not, Air India, all the airlines had to pay for them.
So that letter of, and now he is the CEO of, can you scroll down a bit? Can you scroll down a bit? These are small things which will put you in perspective. This is addressed to me, and I want to show you I received a copy of letter dated 18th November 2003 from Ministry of Civil Aviation. That was me, fortunately, regarding the exemption of payment of PSF and IAPT in respect of air travel of sky marshals on private airlines. What is more important is the policy statement on the next slide. I take this opportunity of conveying our grateful thanks for this decision, which gives relief of this financial burden to the private airlines. You are convinced that all airlines in India, mark the words, this was written in 2003. All airlines in India deserve a level playing field. For that reason, it was possible to achieve this in a short time frame of our bringing the issue to your notice for Jet Airways flight. Jet Airways is not there. And Mr. Wolfgang was the CEO then in the year 29th November 2003. With Air India there was no distortion in the market because policies were made to protect Air India. And to take a decision like this where all airlines have to contribute to nation's growth was a very difficult decision. Fortunately now, with the disinvestment of Air India, there is a level playing field. Both nationally and internationally, these policy decisions, India cannot have a footprint unless we expand internationally. Now with Air India there was a constraint on all airlines because if Air India did not grow or it had a monopoly on certain sectors, it would not, somehow the policy makers would like to protect it. Now it's a level playing field which we are trying to achieve in Vajpayee's government in 2003. Coming next, something very interesting to how policy decisions makes a difference. This did not exist. And I remember the day when I walked up to Mr. Vajpayee and I said, Brajesh ji was the principal secretary to the Prime Minister then. I was a very young, about good 23 years ago. And when I walked up to Mr. Vajpayee and I said, look, Delhi and Bombay deserves modernization of the airport. We need more greenfield projects in this country. And so Vajpayee ji got rattled. He said, "Dekhiye Rudy ji kya kar rahe hain ki sabko private kar do." But then he smiled at me, and the principal secretary to the Prime Minister was standing next to him. And he said, "I will handle it rest." And that was the day when Airport Authority Act was amended. That was the time when two major brownfield projects came in this country called Delhi privatization and Bombay privatization, which you see now heading for a 70 million passengers in Delhi. And that was a decision which changed the complete face of airports. At that point of time, two more decisions were taken. And those were the two greenfield projects which were decided. One was Shamshabad in Hyderabad and other was Devanali in Bangalore. Where you are seated now, where you see a passenger capacity growing to 60 billion or may become 60 billion at some point of time, was a decision taken exactly 20 years ago. And that is what is policy ambition. अब आप कह सकते हैं कि रूडी जी आप ऐसे ही बोले कुछ भी बोल दीजिएगा हम लोग मान लेंगे आप सब आप ही किए हैं तो उसमें then that is the letter. This letter, if you just see who has written this letter to me, and I would like to read it out. Infosys Technologies Limited, Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy, Honorable Minister for Civil Aviation, Ministry of Civil, Government of India. Dear Shri Rudy, it was indeed a great privilege to meet you last week. Please accept my sincere thanks for your courtesy in meeting me in spite of your extremely busy schedule during the Parliament session. On behalf of the members of the Bangalore International Airport Company, I would like to thank you very much for your help in completing the concession agreement for the project which was pending for 2 years. Your support has been a great morale booster for all of us. I would like to assure you that we'll work hard to complete this project and build this airport as one of the best in the world, which is actually coming up today, 20 years later. It will be a great privilege for all of us to welcome you here at Infosys when you are in Bangalore next. It never happened, and it's okay, but his good wishes must be there, is there with me. Now, these two letters, there are hundreds of such correspondences about aviation reforms. I thought, it came in my mind when I was in this hotel, I said I must display it to connect how policy making and one of the finest air traffic controllers building or the tower which exists, right from what we have seen, the World War II towers where still people are operating in this country, to this beautiful tower. This happened because a policy level change was brought in there. And that is what is politics about, parliamentary politics about, decision making about. And this is what we persuade our seniors and our friends and colleagues in bureaucracy, that we have to look big and think big. Now, coming back to another aspect, which none of you would even like to connect, because I fly with most of these pilots, young ones and old ones, and they're very happy. They said a lot of prospects are there. These days, they are too overworked because every airline is trying to make the best use of the time, every TL and so forth. Now, I remember when I was the minister, I used to tell the Air India people that Patna-Ranchi flight of Air India, which is there every day, is more than 90% empty. So when I used to tell them, why don't you charge 3,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees and fill up the aircraft and send it? They said, no, how can they fly? This is only for big people, those who can afford should fly. Otherwise, let the aircraft remain empty. I was aghast because I had started reading about things that how world fills up about low-cost airlines. Well, this was happening, and Mr. Sunil Arora was the CMD there of Air India and Indian Airlines, not very inclined to agree to decisions of political people. And that was a time where a crazy gentleman met me in my office. Why I call him crazy? Because whenever he used to land up in the ministry, he used to create a tremor everywhere. And whenever he used to enter my office, he was panting and we always found that he has done something around in the ministry. And any other officer who saw him near my office would come and complain against him, and that was Captain Gopinath. Now, Captain Gopinath came up with an idea, and he used to every day explain it to me that why do we have a paperless tickets? Why can't we have a paperless this thing? Why can't we have low class this thing? All the concept, no one used to hear him, except me. I used to hear him every day. He used to come. And when Captain Gopinath's first plane took off from Toulouse, he has not written all this in his book. He has been unfair there. And a film has been made where that fire actually took place when I was launching the Vijayawada flight. But he has changed the character and he changed because he had to sell that film properly. So things have changed there. But actually, that was the time when can you believe all the airlines together, Jet, Sahara and Indian Airlines came together to oppose tooth and nail that low-cost airlines will disrupt Indian aviation. They came together. They made complaints against me. They were trying to explain that what he is talking is rubbish. How can you have a paperless ticket? And many more things he used to say. I remember the gentleman is in abroad. This gentleman who has a brewery and a very big man who's unfortunately left India for whatever reason. So he came back and said that DGCA is not allowing me to write, I have a brand called Kingfisher. So I said, what is, because that time when I used to travel abroad, I used to see on planes written, be my baby and this and colorful balloons on the planes. So I used to ask them, if all those aircraft flying across the world can paint their aircraft, why can't you allow someone to write their own brand on the? It took me 6 months to convince DGCA, and Satinder Singh, if there are people from DGCA, Satinder Singh was the DG. Gentleman, very nice person. And finally we said, you can write anything on your aircraft as long as the call signs are visible. I did not understand much of aviation, but then, and it happened, and he wrote Kingfisher on his airlines. Everyone said, how can you do that? It's a liquor brand, and how can you display a liquor brand on the surface of an aircraft and will not give permission? This was the thought process. And finally, I got it changed, and Kingfisher Airlines came into existence, and Kingfisher, everything came. but the struggle to change the mindset of the institution. And this is what is a political decision. Now, moving ahead with Captain Gopinath, he launched, all the airlines got together, whatever happened. His flight took off from Toulouse. There was a hangar allotted to him in Bombay. Air India, when the aircraft took out from there, they cancelled the hangar. He came running back to me again early in the morning and said, "What is this? My first aircraft is coming, and they have chased me out of Bombay International." And the airport authority and everyone got together that how can a private person come with an airline? It's actually happening like that. Finally, it grew. His concept came. He may have failed. His airlines may not have survived. But the idea which was brought in has succeeded, and what growth which you are talking today, compounded growth in aviation, is happened because low-cost airlines established a footprint in Indian arena. And today, all when we are talking about growth, we are talking about certain policies which came into play, whether it's Airport Authority of India, whether it's DGCA, whether it's the airline operators, the airlines, the pilots, the captains, and so forth and so on. It is all policies. And that is the vision one has to create. The Chairman Airport Authority is here. Many people are here. I can come back with many more stories to tell you why it is important and how it is important that we justify our decisions. I've talked about greenfield projects. I've talked about brownfield projects. Now, there is something very funny happening in this country with the policymakers. And because I can take the liberty, because unfortunately you all are here to listen to me, and I think you're supposed to be here, so please listen to me. I have a very strong grievance against the defense. Bagdogra Airport for the last 2 years, the ILS has not been working. You cannot ask them why is it not working. And recently, I think the VME is also not working. You cannot ask a question why it's not. When the captains will land, they would land. Everyone would, because there was a time when sorry for saying this, the pilots, this is a very vague statement I have made, and I'm sure I'll be. There was a time when the pilots used to fly the planes. Now it's the planes which fly the pilots. So there is a change which has taken place, and these are beautiful aircrafts which actually make you land safely. I was in Srinagar, and the whole standing committee of parliament was there, and there was intense snowfall. We all got stuck up. The runway length is good because it's Air Force, excellent runway length. Fighters take off from whether wind direction is whatever, they can take off from any direction, land in any direction. That is the capacity of the robustness. But the MAFI project, which is there in the Indian Air Force, and well, the decision of our policymakers to create airports while Shamshabad has been created, while Devanali has been created, to go into Air Force and say that I want to have my civil enclave here. The day you get into an Air Force thing, you are constraining growth by 80%. Because they will close whatever time. Airport Authority will take 6 months, 3 months to carpet, they will take 2 years. Cat-free landing, ILS system is being installed by the Indian Air Force for the last 5 years. Can you ask a question? No one can ask it because there is a project. They don't want to leave it. Airport Authority knows how. They actually, now these recent big aircrafts which have come, they require ILS and all. Air Force doesn't require an ILS and all these things. They know how to fly. They do fly beautifully with whatever the boys do. They can land anywhere, get off anywhere. But they want to install that ILS because that control and that airport has to be mine. Because the Airport Authority, if it has to reach that location for checking it or repairs, it has to take permission from the cargo, what you call the big boss there in the airport. My brother was I know him. So this is, and the best part is, most of the captains who have come from the Air Force and who are in command with me in the left side are very upset with the behavior of these Air Force aerodromes. When they were there, they never spoke a word. When they are here, they are very upset with what is happening at the defense sector. But defense is very important. Why do we interfere with them? Why can't policymakers decide that forget them, let them do whatever they want to do? And there is an example in this country. Bangalore had HAL. Bangalore had Yelanta, which I have flown all the aircrafts come here, flown the Mirages, the Rafale, the Rafale, everything I have flown from it. It has a beautiful runway, long, everything. Hats off to the political class of the state, whoever was there. They decided to abandon nature, they decided to abandon Yelanta, and they created a new airport 40 kilometers away, which you see the growth and the expansion. This policy level decision was taken at a given point of time. Why can't the other people in the country realize it? But why do you have to criticize the Air Force or the defense for that? We can't. They have their own set of limitations. I can say that they are unfair. No, they are not unfair. We are unfair trying to get into their space and trying to say, why? Why can't we have hundreds of greenfield projects? And again, before I conclude, because there are other sessions there. Bihar has a population of 12 crores. I am a Bihari. I am a hardcore Bihari. Unfortunately, I can speak English, so it becomes slightly discredited in Bihar. हाँ, बिहार में अंग्रेजी बोलने से बहुत गड़बड़ हो जाता है. I don't know how many Biharis are here. All of you are. आप MLA रहे, आप MP बने, आप हवाई जहाज उड़ाते हैं, आप तो ये सब कैसे पॉलिटिक्स में होगा? आप पॉलिटिशियन कैसे हो सकते हैं? जबकि मेरा 30 साल हो गया है. So anyway, this is Bihar. Biharis are great. But Bihar is not. Mind my second sentence. Biharis are good, great. Bihar is not. Why this paradox? Because the policy makers fail to understand how to build up the state. It's not I am the best, but the bureaucrats also fail to assist them to tell them that, sir, this is not done. And I'll tell you a case example now. Bihar with a population of 12 crores does not have, there is one Patna airport. Some of you may have been posted there and DGCA people go. That's called Jayaprakash Narayan International Airport, where no international flight has landed in last 60 years. And people, because people say कि भाई इसको आप international घोषित कर दीजिए. Not realizing by just announcing an international, it does not become international. There has to be traffic, there has to be a capacity, there has to be certain requirements, there has to be a wide body landing. So Patna, we say जहाज उतर ही रहा है ना. Now DGCA also एक बार 2000 में a plane crashed, 45 people died, and DGCA said we'll shut it down. But there was a lot of pressure, so they said कि पेड़ काट दीजिए, ये कर दीजिए, वो कर दीजिए, and we keep on. So lot of conditions, pilot lands, medium brakes, full reversals, पूरी जान निकाल देते हैं ब्रेकिंग में उसका. लेकिन वो because no one is raising a question, और सब लोग उतर जा रहे हैं और they keep come out from the aircraft muttering, कैसा कैप्टन था, कैसा कैप्टन था. कैप्टन ने तो ठीक ही किया, उसको तो रोकना ही है जहाज को, पटकना ही है जहाज को, उसको उतरना ही है और आपको भी यहाँ आना ही है. But no one asked this question. Now I raised this question and I'll conclude it with what has happened. I was talking about it from last 15 years. People have consulted me about greenfield projects across the country. I go across. I may have been a signatory to several private airlines which was given licenses in 2003. All are growing. Bihar. So finally, some bureaucrat have given point of time. He said, now I've got a great idea. We'll create Bihta, which is a defense aerodrome, as an international airport. Now look, what happens when people who should be saying no, so they are spending 1,000 crores, 1,200 crores on Patna airport with zero operational advantage. Whatever limitations existed in last 40 years has not changed now. And they're spending 1,200 crores. Because someone said that Patna mein itna kharab airport hai, Patna mein itna kharab airport hai. Someone said that Patna mein agar kharab hai, to hum log Bihta ko bana dete hain. So they went to Bihta. Now they plan to spend another 1,000 crores. So a question, I raised the question. I said, please explain me, if you spend 1,000 crores in Bihta, what is the difference between Patna and Bihta? They said, no, there is no difference, only a 3-2-1 can land. I said, you are 5% operational advantage. 1,000 crores being spent here, does it justify? Then they said, no, we require more land and we'll put an ILS. So another airport which is being replicated in Bihta is a copy of Patna. And everyone in the system, Airport Authority of India, Ministry of Civil Aviation, all those people who matter in the system say, wow, we have an international airport. A report comes, we cannot have a Cat 3, we cannot have a parallel taxi track, we cannot have this, we cannot have that, we cannot have wide body. And the aspirations of Bihar is being reflected as if Bihta is going to become a world class like Bangalore. A fantasy. A person like me, most of you may not be aware, I have 4 professions, or rather 5 professions, because I've got so much time in my life. Of course, a full-time politician. You will not come across many people in the city also who have my seniority. I'm 30 years in Parliament, 25, 30 years. I'm a university professor in economics, and I teach economics in Patna. I'm practicing in the High Court and the Supreme Court also recently. I've started because I had enough time. And of course, a professional pilot, but not as good as all of them because they have to be with me, but my flights are really good. And I get a lot of applause when I do the landing. And I make it a point to let the passengers know that how was the landing. And of course, I do a lot of farming also. That is my other interest and many more things which I do in my life. My question here is that I've gone to the Patna High Court. And if anyone has I'll put to the ETC Guild also. Last 4 months, I've been pleading for a greenfield project in Bihar. Finally, I could not get it from the state government. They did not understand what's a greenfield project, and there's a whole story. I went to the central government. The central government says, unless until the state government agrees, I'll not do it. They did not agree for it. There's a whole project which has been created for Patna greenfield, as big as Bangalore International Airport. Proposal lying there at the political dispensation of Bihar. They said, नहीं हमने कहा था यहाँ कैसे बन जाएगा? As if airport can be made anywhere when a political change says कि यहाँ बना दो बन जाएगा. They don't realize that it's just not offering a land. There's 100 things required to make an airport. But हमने आपको जमीन यहाँ दे दिया, आप नहीं बनाए. हमने जमीन आपको कहा यहाँ देखिए, नहीं बनाए. And finally, when we could locate the land, the political dispensation said, भाई आप ही को सबसे ज़्यादा है. हम जो कहें वहाँ तो नहीं बनेगा. And finally, I had to go to the High Court, and yesterday evening, an order was loaded by the Chief Justice who comes from the hills. He said, Bihar, 12 crore people, Bihar deserves a greenfield airport. For the safety of people, for the people of Bihar, for the prosperity of Bihar. From 40 kilometers, the state has developed, lakhs of crores have been invested. Same would be true for other places also. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not the best judge. And same would be when these things come. I've not talked much about ATC, but I can talk separately but I have been raising, I can tell you, ATC should not crib about one thing. I am their brand ambassador. Because last 70 years, if anyone has spoken about you in Parliament, not once but 100 times, is Rajiv Pratap Rudy, because you all are unsung heroes. You all are unsung heroes. Because no one knows how you manage things. No one knows. Pilots, they wear a uniform, go around, and then smartly they walk around and they can live. Air hostesses, they know. Other officers, they know. But no one sees an air traffic controller. I am the lone voice in Indian politics who keeps on talking about air traffic. And there are dozen of occasions when the whole Parliament has applauded the effort. You all don't put it on viral. That is the whole problem. You should make it viral. Whenever I speak about it, you should go. Because world over, they do a tremendous job. It's an amazing job which they do. How they handle. I just look at them. Left alone to them, they can make our planes land after some time. We don't require pilots. They can do a reasonably good job. They do a beautiful job. And of course, we keep watching. And fortunately, whenever there is a situation when I'm getting late or very late, I say, former MOCA operating such and such. Now, they would ask, what is this? The captain to my left would say, what is this former MOCA? I said, it's a code word. So, Mike Papa, member of parliament, he said, what is this Mike Papa? How did you know what I'm trying to say? Mike Papa operating subsector from Nizam. Mike Papa is only one MP, he writes, he knows what, there's only one MP, so things fall in place. But this cannot be shared everywhere, what I'm saying. I don't do it, but occasionally when I'm stuck and they don't realize that it's not fair, you have put me for holding for 25 minutes on one point. So I have to call up and say, what are you doing? So that happens occasionally. It's okay, it doesn't matter. And I love being in air. So once I'm in air, it's rarest of occasions I want to come down early because that is the best time I'm enjoying. When the captains don't, I don't feel that. And I love when it is a diversion. Because then I said, chalo, ab jana hi hai, so let's enjoy it. So, because I do only one sector, so it's all these things are fun and it's a meditation for me. Flying is a meditation. Seeing the people, being in the cockpit, and politician being tamed there is something which is phenomenal. I am the most disciplined. You can ask, half of them don't even know who I am. They don't even know what is a member of parliament. They can't distinguish between an MLA and an MP. For them, DGCA is the biggest officer. For them, DGCA is much bigger than the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Minister of Civil Aviation. They don't know, but that is, they are not supposed to know. And the girls are still superior. So they would also not know, and it is very good when people try to read. One of these days, what happened was one of the passengers said, he's Mr. Rudy, member of parliament. No, he's the captain. And they were fighting. He was trying to, do you know who he is? Yes, he's the captain. I know. And they fought and they created. Then he came to when the door opened, said, I've been telling you, this lady doesn't know how to behave. I've been telling you, smart. I said, why do you fight? And I have been having a very tough time because whenever he was saying, you look like that Rudy member of parliament politician. I said, I'm fed up of that man. He resembles me so much that everyone walks up to me and feels like that. So it's great fun and what good words. So tell me what more I have to speak about the APC. Because my information level about them is very less. I stay connected, but you put me in circuit most of the time. So please don't put me in circuit when I'm in a hurry. So they put me in orbit. So they put me in orbit and they say stay connected. So these are the fun of we stay connected and it's lovely to hear all the voices of the air traffic controllers. Occasionally when I'm relaxed, I say hello to them. Half of them get zapped that who is this man who's saying, they think he's crazy. He's saying he's a member of parliament and he's a captain. So what kind of this happens with CISF every day. So they say you are wearing a pilot's uniform and you're saying you're a member of parliament. How do I explain? Because so I have got all the iCards in this thing. So when he doesn't understand what's captain, then I open the member of parliament. So iska to pass sab jagah ke liye. Salam. Thank you very much, and it was just sharing with you whatever, and it is wonderful talking to all of you. Hope to catch on some more occasions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your love. So whenever you are speaking in Parliament, we all are putting your speech as our WhatsApp status. Sir, you told that we are not wiring it. We are always viraling whatever you are telling. Thank you so much. I would like to invite General Secretary Alok Yadav and President Prasanna sir to hand over the memento to Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy, please. Sir, please accept a token of appreciation, token of love from ATCs all across India. You are our voice. Please be there. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you so much. So thank you all for the patient hearing. It was a wonderful work from Mr. Rajiv Rudy. So next we are moving to the program. We have with us Mr. K. Vasudevan, ED Airspace Management. Under his leadership, Indian airspace is touching new heights. More and more directorates under his leadership are taking the turns towards the next gen air traffic management. Sir is heading drone operations, urban air mobility operations, airspace management, all Indian airspace under his guidance is enhancing the capacity. Very soon, the volume of traffic, the growth of volume of traffic we are expecting, the whole modernization of airspace will be taking place under his guidance, under his leadership. So, we'd like to welcome sir on stage for his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, all. We had a wonderful introduction from the former Minister of Civil Aviation, Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy, and also from the Chief Operations Officer of BIAL. And the time given to me was 11 a.m. and the duration was 45 minutes. I'll try to reduce that so that we'll have more discussions today, more productive discussions. And I joined headquarters 4 years ago. I was looking after the airspace management. We've come a long way. There were challenges, and with the traffic growth, we hope to improve on the performance. But the strength of the whole section at headquarters was the officers at the field station, the individual ones who were able to cope up with the growth and give solutions and take it forward. So once again, thanks to the individual officers at the field station who have made it possible, and we take it forward into the next decade, and with help from other agencies, especially from IISc, we hope the project fructifies and quickly. We look forward to meeting you at headquarters and take it forward. Thank you, sir. Though I take care of the air traffic services, the flight procedure design, and the airspace management at headquarters, it's a complete system, and here we talk a part of it about the drones and how to get it into the ecosystem successfully. So drones, which started as a disruptive technology as far as ATC was concerned, which was only creating problems for us, but similar to the mobiles that started off by kicking out the telephone lines, but it's our source of power today to the common man. Similarly, the drones is the enabling technology of today. So for an air traffic controller working at controlled airports, drones is a no-go. No, we don't want them there. But it has to be there. We have to accommodate that. And towards that, we'll have to build our infrastructure. The government of India had a vision and work towards that. We want to make India the face of drone technology. So even though the usage of drones was banned from 2014 onwards, there was a lot of discussion with the Ministry of Civil Aviation, with the DGCA, with the Airports Authority of India, with the Air Force, as to how to get the drones flying. And we had the initial set of regulations With that, we operated for a few years, but found that the drone infrastructure was not up to the mark, but we were trying to go forward. Then another decision came from the government, like the former minister telling us the political will. The government mandated that you need to ensure that the drones are flying. So they created a space, dividing it into three areas, the green, the yellow, and the red, keeping the red to the minimum, mainly the airports, maybe about 5 to 8 kilometers, where you don't allow the drones to come in because it's going to affect the arrivals and departures. Give a broader airspace of yellow, where with the approval of the air traffic control, the drones would be accommodated, and the maximum area, the green, up to a particular height and beyond a particular distance from an airport, where the drones are enabled. This was the changing phase of the drones, and this required minimalistic clearances from the ANSP. The drones were free to operate at most of the places, but still they would like to operate at major cities where you had more population, and we are working towards that. The use of drones, basically what we have seen, are mainly for the surveys, the improvement in the crop technology, flying for the agriculture, the medicine supplies, then the disaster management, and also the use of drones by the military for their own requirements. So these are being allowed on need basis, sometimes even closer to the airports, but on individual clearances. So our requirements, which are to allow the drone movements closer to the airports, are sensitized by the need of security from the Air Force perspective to ensure that they are not misused, as well as to ensure the safety of the manned flights which are operating at the airports. So there, the requirements of a counter-drone technology of stopping the drones which are not desirable is also coming into place. So we have various committees looking at how to go about the counter-drone technology, and a lot of things are taking place, discussions and otherwise. Our main content intention is to ensure the operations of drones into the areas where manned aircraft are operating, and this integration is very critical. Even though as per the ICAO mandate, we are supposed to segregate the drone operation with the manned aircraft as on date, there is a need to have the drones coming into play at airports or closer to airports, and we are looking at various methods to do that. Though in some countries they've done a lot of research, done a lot of work, and in certain areas they have done the integration partially, but with local restrictions. India being a panel member to the drone panel of ICAO, we would like to put in our views and concurrently work with ICAO in designing the rules which would enable this provision, at the same time ensure the safe manned aircraft operations. So this is the requirement where DGCA, the defense authorities, are also in consultation with AI to ensure the safe drone operation closer to airports and to integrate them with the manned aircraft operating close to the airports. So we would like to take this opportunity in taking the views from the users, mainly the drone manufacturers, the pilots, the training agencies, and the defense and DGCA officers to take things forward from the perspective of safe aircraft operations. Thank you. If any of you have any questions, ready to answer. Thanks. You want to ask something, sir? Okay, as far as the shooting down of drones is concerned, the role of an air traffic controller is to ensure that anything that flies in the air is safe. So when you shoot down something, it's not safe, whether it's manned or unmanned, and it's going to have destruction of the property or persons on ground as well. And our contention when the discussion for the counter drone operations have taken place is to see to it that any action taken by the safety agencies or the defense agencies or the policing agencies is that bring it down safely, maybe catch it in the form of a net or something, and see to it that whatever action that they do is not going to affect the manned aircraft which are operating, like you jam the frequency and things like that. So that was our concern. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So it was all about drone under Sir's directorate. So I would like to invite Pradeep sir to hand over a memento to Vasudevan sir, ED ASM. Sir, please. So it's a token of love from ATC Guild, India and Bangalore. Thank you. Next, we have a presentation from Boeing, and after that, we'll be proceeding for lunch. So Boeing is contributing from last more than 100 years to Indian aviation also. They have their office in Bangalore, so we are thankful to Boeing for presenting here. They have accepted our invitation, and they will be presenting on the next-gen air traffic management, which is urban air mobility, as Vasudevan sir has told. We cannot close our eyes. If we'll close our eyes, it doesn't mean that things will not move forward. We are moving into next-gen ATM, so there is a presentation on them. Sir, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me at the back? Thank you. Okay, I'll start with a little bit of introduction. I am Ajit Mate. I am the lead system engineer for air traffic management with the Boeing Research and Technology team here in Bangalore. And I come from an aviation background. I have spent 21 years in the Air Force. I'm a retired navigator from the Indian Air Force. The first 10 years in the Air Force, I spent flying transport aircraft. And the next 10 years, I spent in the surface-to-air guided weapons field, trying to shoot down aircraft which are flying. So I have experience on both sides, and then with Boeing, I have been here for almost 9 years now. For the first 5.5 years, I was doing modeling and simulation for defense customers. And the last 2.5 years are the reason why I am standing on stage here today, because I was part of a team of Boeing experts who prepared the CNS ATM modernization roadmap for the Airport Authority of India. This was a 2-year project which we started in 2019 and delivered last year. And this was basically having a look at the existing technologies, CNS as well as ATM technologies all across the country, and the kind of growth that will be required. Now, a lot of people before me have already mentioned that India is on the upward graph when it comes to aviation. We have less than 800 aircraft presently registered in India. But by a very conservative estimate, we are looking at 2,500 aircraft in another 10 years and possibly 4,000 aircraft registered in India, flying within Indian airspace in the next 15 years. And added to that, when we were doing the CNS ATM roadmap project, we realized that an organic growth was happening in the unmanned sector, aviation sector in India. And this has been recognized by the Indian government also. We have seen the US rules as well as the UTM framework that came out last year, 2021. This is a good first step in encouraging the increase in the growth of unmanned sector within the country. It's a recognition of the fact that we cannot, when we talk about next-gen air traffic management, we cannot neglect the unmanned sector. And like Vasudevan sir here before me just mentioned, the conflict resolution between manned aircraft and unmanned aircraft is going to be a major problem as traffic on both sides, that is the manned aircraft as well as the unmanned aircraft, keeps on increasing over the next decade or so. So I think most of us are related to aviation, so you will be knowing the basic definitions, but I will still like to brush up a few definitions for the benefit of those who don't have too much of reading in unmanned space. UTM is the ATM equivalent in the unmanned space, that is UAS traffic management. The topic for today, urban air mobility. This envisions a safe and efficient aviation transportation system which uses highly automated aircraft that will operate and transport passengers as well as cargo at low altitude within urban and suburban areas. And the next step, where a lot of American and European countries are already thinking of going, is advanced air mobility, which is supporting operations of moving people and cargo between local, regional, intra-regional, as well as urban environments using unmanned systems. Of particular interest today for me is the urban air mobility, because that is the topic that I was asked to talk about. I will thank the ATC Guild India for inviting me for this talk today and for this opportunity to share our thoughts. Our team in Boeing India has been working on the possibility of urban air mobility in Indian cities in a short period. When we started talking about it, even within the company, there were very few believers. We were told not for another couple of decades. But then, as things started developing, as it often happens in India, the growth that was being seen in the market was so phenomenal that people were forced to accept that this is likely to happen, maybe in 5, maybe in 10 years. There are already at least a couple of Indian manufacturers who are ready to fly drone taxis for intercity travel by 2025. Their prototypes are flying by 2025. So that is the topic on which I'll be talking today. I intend to cover the topic under the following heads. First, the feasibility of urban air mobility in India. This has two aspects to it. First, whether there is a need of urban air mobility. Do you really require to fly cargo and people from one part of the city to another part of the city? We'll discuss that, and then we'll talk about important parts like what kind of airspace design, airspace segregation will be required. Will there be corridors? Will there be joint operations airspace? Then we'll talk about the technical feasibility part of it. This refers to systems on ground as well as in air. As all of you will understand, the existing air traffic management and CNS systems which we use for manned aircraft are not of particular use for the unmanned sector. So we have to look at technologies which will be new technologies, which will be specifically designed for unmanned operations, and where are we as compared to the world when it comes to technical feasibility. Then I'll be talking about infrastructure requirements. Again, this refers to both infrastructure on ground, that is spaces where the drones can take off and land from, vertiport, vertihub, maintenance stations, emergency recovery ports, even maintenance, repair, overhaul, or charging stations that will be required for unmanned systems. And we'll also be talking about aerial infrastructure. That means how do you, what changes will we have to make in the air. Another important factor that always comes up is safety and security. we always joke within the country that as long as I am getting 4 Amazon deliveries by drone, I am cool. But as soon as my neighbor starts getting it, I am going to complain about my privacy and the noise pollution. So that is another factor that we have to consider. Regulations and mandates, because without this, nothing grows. We require separate regulations, not the existing regulations. The US rules and UTM framework that I mentioned are a good beginning, but will require continuous upgrades of mandates to support the growth in this field. And finally, standards, because an operator who is operating in one part of the country would like to operate in other parts also. Therefore, there is requirement of standardization of a lot of systems, not only on ground, but also on different types of drones. First, the feasibility of US operations. Like I mentioned, we have to first agree whether there is a need. Now, India has one of the most crowded metropolitan cities anywhere in the world. Anybody who stayed in a metropolitan city like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore for that matter, knows how difficult it is to move around from a place which is on the outskirts or on the other corner of the city to the airport. So movement of people on using the third dimension to shift people movement into the air is certainly a solution that will solve a lot of problems on ground. It will not only reduce the crowded roads, the traffic jams on the road, but it will also possibly reduce the amount of pollution in the city. So there is an agreement that yes, there is a need. Now what is possible? This is the factor where I would like to share personal experience. I was part of the Bharat Drone Mahotsav a couple of months back in Delhi, and there are about 70-75 Indian drone manufacturers in that location displaying their latest products. And when I roamed around in the stalls, that was not a very elevating experience. It was actually very depressing for me, because to understand where drone industry is with respect to where the drones are internationally or where the technologies are internationally was an eye-opener. Frankly, playing the devil's advocate, our drone systems that are in the market are one level above the final year engineering project. We have much to learn and much to improve if we have to reach international standards. And that is where the other part of this thing will come. I'll talk about technology separately. Airspace considerations, like I mentioned, we have to consider not only the possibility of conflict between manned and unmanned aviation, but also whether do you require joint user airspace, what are the kind of rules and regulations that will be required, do you require to segregate UTM and ATM at least in the beginning so that they start operating separately in their own silos, and once the amount of traffic increases, then maybe possibly look at define and use joint use airspace also, especially like sir mentioned, in areas closer to the airport, because most of the metropolitan cities are first going to start by making passengers move from the airport to the city areas. Because what has happened is, like Rudy sir mentioned before me, most of the greenfield airports are coming up a long distance away from the city center, like it is in Bangalore, and moving from the airport to the central business district of the city takes a lot of time on road. So this is a certain gap which needs to be addressed all across the country in all our metropolitan cities. Maybe we can start by defining US corridors in the beginning, and then as the traffic grows, we can go to smoother ways of integrating unmanned as well as manned aviation with each other. There will be requirement, at least in the beginning, to define the rules of business for joint user airspace. And what has been seen is that most of the growth that has happened in the unmanned sector, because of the government policy, has happened in the rural and remote areas of the country. Most of the drones which are currently being sold in the market are used in agricultural purposes. That means for either photographing the crops or spraying the crops. They are used for other purposes like medicine delivery or vaccine delivery to remote areas. So idea is basically to connect the remote areas. But another thought that I felt a lot coming out from the industry during the Bharat Drone Mahotsav was that part of the business, the rural part, addressing the rural needs, is likely to get saturated very fast. And at least the drone industry, the manufacturers are very much interested in shifting the focus to urban uses where multiple use cases can come. We have had 2 years of developed experiments already done, which were done in remote areas, but they were done for a use case that can be used in an urban environment, which was the last mile delivery. So companies like Amazon or even Zomato making deliveries to your house from a central location within the city. Medical services will also be very relevant, especially when we know how difficult it is moving live patients in a city, especially through the traffic jam. Mid-size logistics, possibly small-size packages can also be moved in cities. And as the final step, moving people with the help of drone taxis or even personal air vehicles, which are likely to replace cars in future. Technical feasibility. The reason I'm bringing out all these different headings is that these are tasks on which all of us will need to work together. There is a very important role for the air traffic services to play in this because of your prior experience in controlling aircraft in manned airspace and because of the inevitability of unmanned traffic increasing and interfering with manned aircraft. We have to have a say on this. Now, while we were doing the CNS ATM roadmap, we realized that the technologies that are currently in use all across the country, the CNS ATM technology, they were procured at different times. A lot of times, their vintage varies. Something was bought 20 years ago, something is bought 5 years ago. Those systems don't talk to each other. They don't share data. So there are bad experiences in air traffic management which we can learn from and ensure that same mistakes are not repeated on the unmanned side. Technology to support US traffic management, like again I said, there is no standardization even globally at present for CMS and UTM technologies. Almost all countries who are dabbling with flying drones in urban areas, they are dabbling with their own technologies. They have come up with their own solutions for communication, navigation, surveillance, as well as unmanned traffic management. What we need to do is to follow the best in the world, to see where a majority of the world is going, so that we measure up to the global standard and we make and develop technologies as well as systems which are interoperable anywhere in the world in future. That is where standardization comes in, because unless we standardize our equipment both in air as well as on ground, we will not be able to take care of the globalization part of it. There will be certain amount of balancing required to be done between localization and globalization, because, like I mentioned, the drone industry is not sleeping in India. They have been awake. They have been awake for the last 2 decades. They have been working on a lot of things. There is a lot of effort which has gone into not only developing technologies in the air, but also possibly technologies on ground. And we have to make good use of the local effort which has been done also. So we require a group of stakeholders which can sit together and weigh out what kind of localization is still worth keeping, even while taking care of globalization part of it. Air vehicle specifications, like when you are talking especially of urban operations and different use cases, there are going to be different types of drones flown. There are going to be small quadcopters carrying maybe medicine packs or Amazon deliveries, like I mentioned. There are going to be medium-sized aircraft. There are going to be hybrid aircraft which will fly in city areas. So we need to understand how they are all going to function together and what kind of minimum equipment needs to be defined on board each aircraft, so that we are still in the process of registering and recognizing the aircraft for flying in urban areas. So before we do that, we have to have a minimum equipment list defined for each type and each use case. Okay, a bit on the infrastructure requirements. Like I said, discussed this already, technology availability on ground as well as support services. A lot of support services that are required for flying unmanned systems will have to be started from scratch. For example, a simple thing like weather in a city area is not available for drone operations. If the drones are going to operate less than 400 feet or maybe less than 1,000 feet within built-up areas, the kind of weather that exists in city areas, in between tall high-rise buildings, the way the wind moves, the currents move, there are no sensor systems currently available anywhere in the country. So this has to start from scratch. Nature of supporting infrastructure, that is what the stakeholders need to sit together and discuss. What is the kind of supporting infrastructure we will require? What is the kind of standardization that will be required for those systems? CNSI network, we have put the small I there because CNS all of us understand, but the information networking of it is going to be more relevant in future. I think what will happen is the unmanned systems, the UTM systems that will develop in the country will be first starting based on a single data exchange platform. And once it is proven on the unmanned system side, then a similar thing can be grown into the manned aviation and ATM side also, so that we have a single data integration platform which enables real-time exchange of information between all stakeholders. That is the reason why that small I has come in. And UTM and UAM systems, like I said, a UTM system may be used outside the urban area also, maybe as a part of an AAM system, but the urban air mobility systems will essentially be used only within city and suburban areas. Physical infrastructure, we still don't know what types of drones we expect to be operating in India, what types of vertiports or vertihubs will be required, how do you ensure the safety security of these ground installations, how do you ensure that they have the required facilities for charging, discharging available. And the electrical grid, now this is a very interesting fact. I was speaking to somebody from India Smart Grid Forum, Dr. Reggie Pillai, who is the president of that forum, and they have a mandate to develop the electrical grid for 100 smart cities of India. And they are already thinking on how to use the same electrical grid for charging electrical vehicles on ground, electrical taxis, electrical buses, and maybe on the top, drones also. So there is going to be a thrust from the government side to have co-located vertiports where maybe on the ground floor, electrical buses for intercity travel are being charged, and on the top, the drones are also being charged. So the preparation planning of that electrical grid is going to be critical. And like I mentioned, since smart travel by drones is going to be a part of smart transport solutions for the city as a whole, we need to look for commonality with other ways of transport on ground also. Safety and security, like I mentioned, we have done a good beginning, but continuous upgrade of regulations and mandates in this field is going to be required. When we did a little bit of study of what the other people in the world were doing, we studied especially the advanced air mobility national campaigns that are being conducted by NASA in the US. The NASA, FAA, and a lot of industry members, Boeing being a part of it, have been working on the advanced air mobility national campaign, and a lot of due diligence has gone into informing this part of it, how the regulations will be able to support future operations in a functional urban air mobility system. Roles and responsibilities, here again we have done a very good beginning by defining the roles and responsibilities of a lot of stakeholders in the US rules and the UTM framework. But there will be new stakeholders coming in. Like I mentioned, ANSP main role for the national airspace is going to most likely stay with the Airport Authority of India. But there are going to be small UTM service providers who will only provide within certain part of the city UTM services. There may be areas in the city where multiple UTM service providers will be available concurrently. How do they talk to each other? How do their systems function with each other? And how do they connect to the local airport, to the air traffic management system, so as to ensure there is no conflict in future? That is going to be very important while defining the roles and responsibilities. Safety concerns, one of the most important things that all over the world people have been thinking about is when you let a drone operate overhead populations, there are a lot of risks that need to be mitigated. In case a drone is operating in a remote area or maybe over a farmland, in case there is an emergency and the drone crashes, it's not going to make much of a difference to anybody. But when it starts doing that in a built-up area in a city, then all of us are concerned. I don't want drones falling over my children's head. I'm sure none of us, you would like that. So that is the reason why contingency management is going to be critical. What types of drones are operating and how they can be recovered at what stage of flight in case of an emergency. Privacy concerns and liability definitions, which I mentioned earlier, these are not that big things, at least in India, but they are big things in US and Europe. But in future, these are likely to be stumbling blocks. The connecting of the community is very important for urban air mobility to succeed. And that is the reason why we need to have representatives from the general population having a say about liability and privacy concerns. And environmental concerns, whether actually a drone delivery system in the air in the city is going to actually lead to lesser pollution or not. It depends on how many drones we are operating and of what type. Because if everybody goes by the battery route, everybody knows that the only country making lithium-ion batteries today is China. So they can strangle your whole system the day they decide to do that. So we can't afford to depend on a single type of power for this thing. Secondly, there is no known way of battery disposal for lithium-ion batteries. That means we are converting one pollution problem to another pollution problem. So there needs to be a discussion. There needs to be brainstorming between stakeholders, city authorities, maybe government authorities, on all these factors. A little bit more on regulations and mandates. What we suggest is that there has to be a incremental growth in the ecosystem. That means suddenly 100 or 500 different drones are not going to start operating within a city area. We will certainly start with one particular role, one particular type of drone first, and slowly, incrementally grow it so that we make a more complex and more dense drone environment easily, safely, and smoothly integrable into the ATM environment. So for this, civil aviation regulations will be required to be upgraded at different times as the progress happens. Global best practices, like I mentioned, operations over populated areas is a big concern area. It will be a big concern area in India also once things start flying. Once a drone taxi with 4 passengers is going to fly over my society, then I am going to be worried. In case of emergency, what is he going to do? So we have to follow global practices on this. We have to know what the world is doing. There are drone taxi services starting within a year or so in Middle East. There are drone taxi trials going on in New Zealand, in Australia. There are a lot of similar trials happening in US and UK also. So there is a lot of precedents that we can learn from. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We need to learn from them and we need to hit the ground running. Initially, we hope that regulations will help segregate airspace and designate joint use airspace, which will support this kind of incremental growth. And growth will be expected both in the complexity of operations as well as density of operations. If you remember the definition of UAM, we were talking about automated aircraft also. So the level of autonomy of the aircraft is going to add to the complexity, and the number of drones operating in a restricted city area is also going to add to the density. The higher the density, the higher the complexity, more due diligence is required, more control is required on the whole system. The government has followed a policy of minimum interference, especially with respect to growth in the drone sector and the US sector. This is a very nice thing in the beginning, yes. But once a larger number of drones start operating and possibly start having accidents, that is the time when we need to balance this out. We need to have the correct stakeholders sitting across the table and discussing how this growth is to be managed. We expect that depending on type of drones and use case, there will be generally a use case and type of drone matching. That means Uber or an Ola will be flying a very different type of unmanned system as compared to Amazon system. So there are going to be different use cases. They will require separate minimum equipment list and they will require separate equipment on board. So we have to ensure that they are in real time contact with some agency at all times. Standardization of UTM equipment will be necessary because in order to ensure that a drone that is flying today in Delhi should be able to fly tomorrow in Mumbai, and day after tomorrow in Chennai also. So some kind of a standardization of, especially this is more important because we are envisaging the role of a number of UTM service providers operating in different parts of the country. So that is the reason why we need to standardize the equipment that they will be using. Adhering to global standards, like I mentioned, this makes it easier for India to be called as the drone hub of the world by 2030. That is the vision of this government. We intend to reach there by 2030. Then we have to adhere to global standards. And indigenous technology to be encouraged, like I mentioned, a lot of growth has been happening in this industry for the last couple of decades almost. And there is a lot of good work being done which needs to be built upon and polished. We need to polish it to make it of international standards. Otherwise, we are already developing technologies and systems on our own. Okay, I have finished. I'll leave you with a few thoughts. I believe that India often surprises the world, and we are the fastest adopters of new technology. Way back in 2012, I had gone for some Air Force job to Paris, and I realized that the mobile that I bought in Vadodara, Gujarat, was yet to be released in Paris. It was being advertised as being released next month in Paris. So that is what is happening with adoption of technology in India. We are fast adopters, and the world knows it. Local industry is gearing up, like I mentioned. Startups are working. A lot of work has been done, but we, as air traffic managers, air traffic controllers, and UTM service providers of future, we need to hit the ground running. We are already behind the industry. And clear and precise government support will be required. We have a lot of support for rural and remote operations of drones at present, but as and when the industry shifts its focus towards urban operations, we will require more support from the government side also. I have finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. One thing I want to add to this is, now we are doing the ILS calibration with the help of an aircraft. In some countries, trials are happening where ILS calibration is done by a drone, and that too in half an hour, and to be very precise, 100% accurate. So very soon we also will be moving towards that. Our directorate will definitely look into this in the near future. And I would like to invite Shivu sir to present memento to the speaker. Sir, please. As a token of appreciation from ATC Guild India. Thank you, sir. There will be more presentations after the lunch break. So much awaited lunch break is here. All are requested. At the end, there is a door. Please proceed. And to the right side also, both sides, lunch buffets are there. Thank you so much. Please proceed for the lunch. And we'll gather again at 2 o'clock sharp.